The young boy crosses his arms with a makeshift wooden wand, stepping forward to defend the village in their imaginary duel. His playmate charges right at him, roaring like a terrifying magical beast ready to devour the grand wizard whole. Instead of casting a spell, the kid winds up his wooden stick to deliver very physical counterattack. He smacks her straight on the forehead, turning a magical roleplay battle into an instant playground brawl. The smug little wizard proudly celebrates his victory while the poor girl bursts into tears at the unfair hit. She screams that wizards do not use sticks, completely unaware that Labus is quietly watching their energetic squabble from down the path. The local villagers chuckle at the lively commotion, warmly greeting Grandpa Labus as he strolls through the sunlit square with his staff. Both kids immediately drop their fight, their faces brightening up the second they spot the beloved elder standing before them. Behind his gentle smile, Labus carries memories of supreme sorcerers wielding immense golden arrays that could reshape entire battlefields. A local townsman strikes up a cheerful morning conversation, but the elder remains distracted by far heavier matters. Labus turns to listen as the talk shifts toward disturbing rumors, prompting him to keep his guard up. The townsfolk explain the unsettling situation unfolding nearby, hoping their experienced elder might know how to handle the trouble brewing outside. Hearing the grim news, Labus tightens his jaw, well aware of the terrifying threat that once tore through the land. Dark whispers speak of sinister monstrosities cloaked in shadowy flames, capable of wiping out entire settlements in the blink of an eye. Fearsome beasts crackling with lethal lightning once ravaged these territories, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake. Back in the square, a mother pulls her crying daughter close, gently comforting the little girl after her rough playtime. Her gentle smile calms the child down, bringing warmth back to what could have been a nasty fight. She pats the young girl on the head, reassuring her that everything is fine before sending her on her way. The wooden stick is picked up off the cobblestones, wrapping up the morning commotion as everyone returns to their daily routines. The worried townsman presses Labus for answers, desperate to protect the peaceful village from whatever lurking danger approaches. Labus grips his wooden cane tightly, realizing he must seek out someone with the actual power to resolve this crisis. High above the peaceful settlement, rolling green hills stretch out under the clear sky, far away from all the town gossip. Down in the lush pasture, a wild rabbit dozes comfortably in the warm sunshine, completely undisturbed by the world. Our boy is fast asleep in the meadow, using fluffy sheep as a pillow while his trusty dog rests nearby. The silver-haired youth lazily lounges with a stalk of grass in his mouth, enjoying a quiet life far away from battlefield chaos. Surrounded by his grazing flock, our protagonist could not care less about distant troubles, content to spend his afternoon basking under the sun. His sheep wander peacefully across the vibrant hillside, completely safe under the watchful presence of their unusually capable guardian. The quiet ranch sits secluded in the valley, serving as the perfect hideaway for someone trying to leave the past behind. The silver-haired youth stretches out against the soft wool, savoring the absolute tranquility of another ordinary day. A sudden rustle in the grass catches his ear, prompting him to open one eye to see who dared disturb his nap. Labus hobbles all the way up the hill on his staff, standing directly over the lounging shepherd with a stern look. The silver-haired youth just smirks, asking if the old man came all this way just to hold a petty grudge over past arguments. Labus grumbles under his breath, exasperated by the idea of turning the entire flock into shared town property. The young shepherd pushes himself up from the grass, shaking off his midday slumber to hear why the elder really showed up. Labus barks at him to drop the attitude, demanding he speak his mind before serious trouble arrives right at their doorstep. His eyes narrow as Labus brings up a sudden warning, signaling that their peaceful mountain routine is about to be shattered by an unexpected threat. The silver-haired youth questions if a magical beast truly wandered near the village, while Labus leans heavily on his cane, catching his breath after the climb. Labus describes a monstrous predator the size of a whole house, but the young shepherd merely strokes the wool of his grazing sheep. He gently rubs the sheep and teasingly asks if the old man is trembling with fear over some wild rumor. The old man stares down at the relaxed boy, warning him that ignoring danger will get the entire flock slaughtered. Closing his eyes in frustration, the elder sighs, knowing stubborn pride always gets youths into trouble. The young shepherd keeps his back turned, quietly listening as the old man prepares to head back to town. A subtle grin crosses his face as he reassures the elder not to worry about what lurks beyond the hills. That playful mood vanishes for a split second, replaced by a cold, hardened gaze that hints at a dangerous past. Labis grumbles angrily and hobbles back down the trail, leaving the shepherd standing alone under the open sky. One of the sheep blinks curiously, oblivious to the monstrous danger lurking somewhere in the nearby woods. Setting off across the pasture, the young shepherd decides to inspect the perimeter himself before night falls. He walks among his grazing flock, casually wondering what kind of wizard the village might hire to deal with such beasts. Our boy smiles up at the bright sky, genuinely curious whether this supposed expert possesses real combat strength. His expression sharpens instantly as an unnatural chill cuts through the air, triggering his razor-sharp combat instincts. Standing completely still on the crest, he locks his full attention onto the dense tree line below. Sunset bathes the deep forest in an amber glow as ominous winds rustle through the thick canopy. He steps quietly onto the dirt path, tracing the faint signs left along the mountain trail. Following the trail deeper into the shadowy woods, he searches for the route Labis took earlier. A sudden metallic stench hits the air, wiping the calm smirk clean off his face. He stops dead in his tracks, feeling an ominous dread hanging heavy in the forest air. Looking up in shock, he freezes at what lies directly ahead in the clearing. Labis lies butchered on the blood-soaked ground, torn apart and lifeless before our boy can even process the gruesome scene. Dead silence falls as he inspects the brutal wounds carved into the fallen elder. Placing a hand to his chin, he immediately deciphers the shredded claw marks left on the mangled corpse. The savage tearing confirms that a vicious magical beast struck with lethal precision, giving the old man zero chance of survival. A sudden wave of murderous intent makes him whip his head around just in time. A massive armored claw slams into the dirt, pulsing with dark miasma and burning yellow energy. An enormous beast rises through the smoke, growling with primal fury as shadow energy radiates from its jagged frame. Heavy armored paws crush the undergrowth, leaving deep gouges in the earth as the predator steps into full view. The gigantic predator looms high over the silver-haired youth, bearing glowing eyes and crackling with lethal mana as an intense clash begins. Meanwhile, inside a warm tavern, a young dark-haired boy sits patiently at the table, eagerly waiting with his utensils ready. The tavern keeper approaches with a cheerful smile, carrying a freshly cooked plate of fluffy pancakes. He sets down the golden stack, topped with a rich slab of melting butter and sweet syrup. Resting a comforting hand on the young boy, the man warmly tells him to dig in and enjoy the meal. The young boy gazes up with wide, innocent eyes, completely grateful for the warm meal placed right in front of him. The innkeeper smiles down warmly, genuinely happy to see the kid finally safe and enjoying some much-needed food. Back in the woods, the giant beast unleashes blinding burst of yellow aura as its fury reaches a boiling point. It bears rows of razor-sharp fangs, letting out an earth-shattering roar that shakes the entire forest to its core. The silver-haired youth turns his head toward the monster, looking completely unbothered by the sheer killing intent ahead. A cocky smirk spreads across his face as he prepares to show this overgrown beast who really runs these woods. The armored beast erupts into a furious charge, tearing through the dirt and closing the distance in a split second. Yellow energy crackles along the beast-cracked skull, locking onto its prey with raw primal bloodlust. Our boy stands his ground firmly, radiating an intense crimson aura that proves he is not backing down for anyone. He casually scratches his neck with a bored expression, clearly treating this deadly monster like nothing more than light exercise. The colossal beast leaps high into the air, blazing with fiery energy to crush him in a single devastating strike. Instead of panicking, the youth shouts out a taunt, welcoming the challenge head-on without flinching an inch. The monster swings its massive armored claw downward, slicing through the air with enough force to shatter solid stone. A wicked grin crosses his face, confident that the beast just made the biggest mistake of its entire life. The monster claw slams down with explosive force, erupting in a violent cloud of dust and shattered rock. Glowing yellow light pulses across the beast's rocky armor as it scans through the rubble for its target. Having dodged the strike with ease, the silver-haired youth perches high above on a sturdy branch, looking down coolly. He lets out a calm breath of air, studying the monster movements before launching his counterattack. Slipping his hand into his pouch, He grips a dense stone packed with concentrated destructive power. He swiftly unhooks the sling wrapped around his wrist, ready to turn a simple pebble into a lethal weapon. Swinging the leather cord overhead at blinding speed, he builds up an insane amount of momentum behind his attack. Down below, the armored beast snarls and barrels forward on all fours, charging aggressively toward his position. He locks the heavy stone securely into the leather pocket, channeling his mana directly into the shot. Thrusting his hand forward to lock onto his target, he steadies his aim while keeping the sling ready. His eye ignites in a brilliant golden glare, instantly calculating the exact trajectory to pierce the beast armor. The sling cuts through the air in a gleaming luminous arc, accelerating the stone to thunderous speed. He stomps his foot down to anchor his stance, transferring every ounce of force straight into the projectile. With a single focused glare, he guides the shot straight toward the weak point in the monster defenses. The stone shoots forward like a spiraling beam of blue light, tearing open the air with terrifying velocity. The streak of lethal energy barrels straight down toward the charging beast, giving the creature zero time to react. It tears right into the beast's shoulder, piercing clean through its stone-hard hide like paper. Black blood and shattered armor fragments explode into the air as the devastating force rips through flesh and bone. The beam continues to drill deep through the monster body, making the massive predator reel back in sheer agony. The kinetic impact detonates upon exit, blasting apart the surrounding earth in a massive burst of dust and debris. Battered and bleeding, the enraged beast roars in absolute fury, towering over the youth as the real battle begins. Instead of flinching before the rampaging monster, our boy simply grins, completely unfazed by its terrifying roar. As the furious beast charges down the path, he hovers a massive boulder high into the air right above it. Aiming straight for the head, he unleashes a spiraling strike that detonates right against the monster's skull in a brutal spray of blood. The piercing kinetic force tears clean through the creature, crushing bone and flesh with overwhelming sonic power. With the colossal predator collapsing lifeless into the dirt, he casually remarks that this was his first time testing that attack on a magical beast. Staring down at the mangled carcass, he calmly ponders whether he should just toss the giant body into a nearby ravine to dispose of it. 8 years ago, the silver-haired boy discovered he possessed an extraordinary power, watching pieces of firewood lift into the air with glowing blue energy. The strange aura filled the entire room, lifting random household items off the ground without him ever touching them. Heavy stools, iron pokers, and loose supplies floated around the cabin as his telekinesis flared out of control. Sitting happily on the wooden floor, the silver-haired boy stretched his hands upward to guide the floating beam. He could not hide his excitement, completely thrilled by this miraculous gift he had just awakened. He dashed toward his mother to show off his new trick, expecting her to be proud of him. His mother froze in absolute horror, terrified by the dangerous power her young child was displaying. Snatching the floating log straight out of midair, she shattered his excitement, leaving the boy totally bewildered. She dropped down to eye level and placed a firm hand on his shoulder, bringing every hovering object crashing down. The silver-haired boy meekly nodded, sensing the deadly seriousness behind his mother's trembling expression. The clutter lay scattered across the floorboards, proving that this power was something that had to remain buried. She leaned in close to deliver a warning that would shape the rest of his life. Looking down at her son with a bittersweet smile, she began explaining the ancient legends of their world. The young boy listened with rapt attention, desperate to understand why his gift frightened her so deeply. Every single word she spoke etched itself into the silver-haired boy's memory, warning him of the world beyond. She told tales of celestial beings who descended from the heavens long ago to rescue humanity from destruction. A sacred blade bathed in divine essence was left behind as a remnant of that holy salvation. Yet that same divine power was drenched in bloodshed, turning holy miracles into tools of conquest. Reaching down, she picked up the fallen staff and confirmed the harsh reality of their cursed heritage. Turning her back to him, she reminded him that wielding such an ability would only draw unwanted blood. Years rolled by, and that innocent boy grew into a capable warrior, carrying the heavy weight of her warnings. Now fully grown, our boy carried a calm and hardened gaze that masked his true, hidden potential. His mother's warm smile remained vivid in his thoughts, guiding every step he took in isolation. Back in the present, the silver-haired youth stood silently inside his secluded cabin, staring out toward the sunlit countryside. He reached out and pulled the curtain aside, checking on the quiet surroundings outside his home. Looking through the glass pane, he kept a sharp eye on the perimeter, anticipating any unexpected trouble. The quiet afternoon suddenly shattered when violent thuds echoed from the front door, shaking the entire wooden cabin. The silver-haired youth narrowed his eyes, instantly recognizing the hostile ruckus kicking up right at his doorstep. Someone slammed a heavy fist against the wood outside, furiously shouting for him to drag himself out immediately. Unbothered by the aggression, our boy slid the door open and casually leaned back against the frame. A crew of burly local thugs stood outside, crossing their arms and glaring down at him with menacing scowls. Instead of backing down, the silver-haired youth covered his mouth and let out a massive, disrespectful yawn. His complete lack of fear caught the entire gang off guard as he stood casually before them. Infuriated by his smug attitude, the thugs marched forward across the grass to put him in his place. The lead brute lunged forward and grabbed him tightly by the collar, barking that he was about to regret acting tough. The brute roars in his face, furiously accusing him of using someone as live bait in front of a magical beast. Behind the leader, the rest of the villagers clutched their wooden clubs, looking hesitant despite having the clear numbers advantage. Veins bulge in the thug eye as pure fury takes over, convinced he is about to teach the kid a lesson. Our boy just flashes a calm, mocking smile right back, completely unfazed by the aggressive grip on his collar. That smug expression completely snaps the brute patience, and he pulls back a heavy fist with a deafening war cry. The massive punch slices through empty air as the silver-haired youth effortlessly leans backward to dodge underneath the blow. His eyes stay ice-cold mid-dodge, tracking every millimeter of the attack with complete composure. In a split second, our boy springs forward and delivers a brutal counter straight into the man's nose, spraying blood. The leader crashes into the grass like dead weight, while our guy casually steps toward the rest of the gang. A chilling smirk plays across his lips, letting the rest of them know they picked the wrong cabin today. Panic sweeps through the group as one thug loses his balance, tumbling backward onto the lawn in absolute dread. The silver-haired youth glides across the turf with blinding speed, shutting down any chance of a counterattack. Before another villager can even swing his weapon, our boy clamps down on the man's wrist with crushing force. He shatters the wooden club to pieces, slamming the remnant straight across the thug jaw and knocking him senseless. Spinning on his heel, he whips a devastating elbow right into the next guy, flattening him instantly into the dirt. The remaining thugs rush in all at once, but every desperate swing gets brutally intercepted before landing. Broken sticks go flying through the air as their makeshift weapons crumble under the sheer power of his strikes. The battered men collapse across the lawn one after another, gasping for breath while clutching their bruised bodies. Within seconds, the entire mob lies scattered across the grass as the silver-haired youth casually dusts his hands off. He glances off toward the hill, noticing a small group of village women watching the aftermath from a distance. With an unimpressed glare, he bluntly asks if they came up the path looking to pick a fight as well. The women immediately throw their hands up in surrender, nervously stammering that they have no hostile intentions at all. He scoffs softly and orders them to take those beaten fools and get back down the hill immediately. Stepping back inside the piece of his cabin, he pulls off his heavy winter coat to finally get some rest. Undoing his hair, he grumbles that heading into town to trade will be annoying since merchants will use this ruckus to lower prices. He tosses his jacket over a chair, casually deciding that if anyone tries to lowball him, he'll just beat them up too. Before he can even sit down, violent banging suddenly rattles against the front door with thunderous force. Thoroughly annoyed by the relentless disruption, he stops in his tracks and glares back toward the shaking wood. A heavy leather glove pounds repeatedly against the entrance, without giving him even a second of quiet. Fed up with the relentless pounding, our silver-haired host violently throws open the front door to confront the noisy visitor. The bright sunlight pours into the doorway, revealing a much different kind of visitor standing on his porch. Standing outside is a tall, imposing scarred warrior dressed in long travel coats and polished leather armor. The muscular traveler stands firm in heavy boots, facing our sandal-wearing silver-haired youth right at the threshold. A nervous bead of sweat drips down the scarred man's face as he stammers out a startled reaction. The silver-haired youth merely stares back up at the mysterious guest, waiting for an explanation with a sharp, guarded glare. The scarred warrior softens his expression completely, looking down at the host with an awkward and apologetic gaze instead of picking a fight. He keeps his sharp eye on the traveler, wondering why a man built like a fortress suddenly looks so timid. A loud rumble from the warrior's stomach breaks the heavy silence, turning the awkward standoff into pure embarrassment as the silver-haired youth smiles. Letting out a quiet chuckle, he decides to drop his guard and warmly invites the starving guest inside. The wooden door clicks shut behind them as the traveler enters the quiet mountain cabin to get some food. A generous meal of warm soup, fresh bread, sliced meats, and cheese is laid out across the wooden dining table. The famished warrior digs in without wasting a single second, tearing into the warm loaf of bread like a man possessed. Across the table, the silver-haired youth takes his seat, eating his meal with quiet elegance and impeccable posture. Setting down his spoon with practiced grace, he finishes his portion without spilling a single drop across the clean table. The scarred traveler takes a long swig from his wooden mug, washing down his meal while watching the young host closely. Wiping his mouth with his collar, the warrior pauses after noticing something quite extraordinary about the boy across from him. His gaze narrows with growing curiosity as he realizes this simple mountain youth behaves nothing like a common villager. The silver-haired youth lifts his mug with both hands, drinking smoothly with the refined etiquette of high nobility. Caught off guard by the sudden scrutiny, the boy blinks in surprise and asks what the traveler means. The scarred guest clears his throat and points out that his table manners are far too proper for an ordinary shepherd. He presses 2 fingers to his temple, noting that such dining etiquette belongs in a palace alongside great lords. The silver-haired youth calmly rises from the table and heads toward the hearth, brushing off the high praise without arrogance. He simply explains that he is only following what his mother taught him every day growing up. Chewing on a piece of dried meat, the scarred traveler shifts the conversation to the real reason behind his sudden visit. The boy listens quietly from the counter, waiting to hear what brought a heavily armed warrior to his doorstep. Looking over his shoulder, the silver-haired youth gives the man his full attention as the atmosphere turns serious. The traveler reveals that he accepted an urgent request from the village chief regarding a dangerous threat nearby. Confirming the rumors, the warrior explains that a fearsome presence has been stirring trouble around the mountain borders. He chews thoughtfully on his meat stick, measuring his words carefully before dropping the full details of his mission. Sitting back in his chair, the traveler lays out the village warnings about a deadly creature roaming these woods. The silver-haired youth stands perfectly still, taking in every word as the name of the threat is brought up. His gaze turns remarkably sharp and guarded when the warrior mentions that the village chief spoke of a magical beast. The warrior bites down firmly on his jerky, noticing the sudden surge of intensity radiating from the quiet young shepherd. Clenching his teeth around the dried meat, the seasoned traveler realizes there is far more to this youth than meets the eye. Sitting in the dimly lit room, the brooding warrior lowers his head as heavy thoughts race through his mind. The scarred warrior raises his eyes with intense focus, demanding answers from the enigmatic host standing before him. Clasped hands resting steadily in front of him, the battle-hardened guest prepares to ask the burning question on his mind. As the warrior directly asks who he really is, a memory surfaces of the silver-haired boy sitting quietly beside his gentle mother. Back then, the young boy looked up with wide, curious eyes whenever his mother moved softly around the sunlit room. His mother looked back at him with tender warmth, carrying deep secrets behind her gentle and loving smile. The memory brings back grand halls of worship, where hooded followers bowed in silence before a revered figure cloaked in golden light. Devotes knelt shoulder to shoulder in reverence, hiding weapons beneath heavy robes while ancient sacred rituals unfolded. His mother spoke with a tender smile, whispering words of quiet guidance that stayed carved into his mind. Back then, the young silver-haired boy listened closely, uncertain of the heavy legacy she was preparing him to carry. Returning to the present, the silver-haired youth turns back with a calm, unreadable gaze, unaffected by the intense interrogation. Sitting back at the table, the scarred warrior waits for an answer, while he stands motionless, letting the silence do the talking. The silver-haired youth stares forward with an unreadable expression, completely silent inside the dimly lit room. His silver eye flickers with faint light as he quietly weighs every word spoken between them. Across the table, the bearded guest scratches the back of his neck in slight embarrassment. He laughs it off with an easy grin, teasing that a deadpan face like that makes his joke fall completely flat. Our boy breaks his cold demeanor with an awkward sweat drop, caught off guard by the man's casual banter. He sheepishly apologizes, admitting he simply does not have much of a sense of humor to offer. The veteran waves off the apology right away, insisting that he was the one who overstepped. A warm smile finally appears on the silver-haired youth's face as the lingering tension completely melts away. The bearded knight extends an open hand across the room, offering an earnest gesture of peace. With a genial grin, he invites his young host to start over on proper friendly terms. Their hands meet in a firm grasp, forging an unspoken bond between two total strangers. Standing before the warm stone hearth, the two formally introduce themselves and settle in for the evening. They sit back down side by side, ready to share a quiet meal together in comfort. Over hot roasted meat and bread, the knight casually reveals that he is already 75 years old. Trained warriors age much slower than normal people, which explains why he still looks so exceptionally youthful and strong. The conversation flows effortlessly as they continue eating under the warm glow of the lantern. The silver-haired youth smiles gently, explaining how he simply wanted to wander freely during his quiet years. The older man chuckles warmly, thoroughly amused by his young host having such a seasoned perspective on life. For once, a genuine smile stays painted across our boy's face as he listens intently. The veteran matches his good spirits, grinning broadly while trading stories of the outside world. Hours slip away entirely unnoticed, while the two sit together exchanging lively tales deep into the night. Before they even realize it, morning light peeks through the window, signaling that dawn has already broken. The knight rises from the table with a satisfied stretch, ready to begin his travels once more. He places an Arabian coin down on the wooden counter as fair payment for the shelter and warm meal. Our boy stands by the table and politely wishes the older man smooth and safe journey ahead. With one final parting smile over his shoulder, the seasoned knight prepares to step out into the morning chill. He clenches his fist in quiet determination, carrying his own unresolved duties back into the wild. Fresh morning breeze sweeps across the lush green hillside, overlooking the quiet town down below. Out on the peaceful pasture, the flock of fluffy sheep grazes quietly across the rolling hills. A relaxed smile forms on our boy's lips as he watches over the tranquil meadow. Looking back on their late-night chat, our boy realizes he cannot even remember the last time he had such an open, genuine conversation with anyone in his entire life. Gently petting one of his sheep, he reflects on the veteran's rare composure and effortless warmth. The older knight had always returned to his doorstep, carrying fresh game with a warm, booming laugh. Our boy had always believed knights were nothing more than ruthless hunting hounds bred to serve arrogant nobles. Glancing up toward the bright sky, he finds himself quietly wondering how the friendly veteran's hunt is going today. Meanwhile, deep within the foggy forest, the seasoned knight travels down an isolated trail while watching his surroundings. He abruptly stops in his tracks and mutters that something feels completely wrong, noticing an eerie silence in the woods. Freshly splintered tree stumps clearly prove a violent clash occurred here, yet he cannot sense any lingering beast all raw. Looking high up a massive trunk, he spots a glowing core embedded into the bark where a beast was felled. He mutters to himself, questioning who could have taken out the creature and left its precious core behind without harvesting it. Looking down at the slain beast, the veteran knight is left completely baffled about who could have defeated such a creature. The monster crystalline core still radiates pure magic, proving whoever killed it walked away without even touching the valuable spoils. Closing his eyes, he sharpens his senses to track any subtle mana fluctuations lingering in the dense forest air. A sudden wave of murderous intent jolts him awake, forcing his eyes open as danger strikes without warning. Spinning around with lightning reflexes, he immediately braces himself as a suffocating raw drops right behind his back. Its grotesque claw bearing a glowing yellow eye slams into the dirt path, oozing foul black sludge. Malicious energy erupts from the ground as the reanimated beast rises, revealing a horrific body twisted by dark corruption. Rows of jagged fangs gape wide alongside thrashing tongue dripping with raw malice and unbridled bloodlust. The massive behemoth looms high over the night, filling the entire forest path with an overwhelming aura of dread. Breaking out in a cold sweat under the immense pressure, the knight realizes he is facing a lethal monstrosity. Vicious black claws rip through the sky in a downward swipe, meant to pulverize him instantly. Razor-sharp talons crash down with overwhelming force, threatening to crush the veteran before he can even blink. The ground shatters into pieces as he leaps clear, realizing unharvested beast mana has mutated the corpse into a reanimated puppet. Dodging through the air, he notes that no skilled hunter would ever make the foolish mistake of leaving beast mana uncollected. Launching himself high above the forest canopy, he creates distance from the beast to set up an aerial counterattack. Inverting his descent in mid-fall, his eyes narrow with deadly focus as he prepares to unleash decisive strike. Landing firmly back on the ground, he deduces that only an inexperienced rookie could have been so careless with the carcass. Gathering his mana between both palms, he concentrates a brilliant sphere of golden energy to annihilate the abomination. The golden orb shapes into a crackling lance of radiant light as the veteran prepares to destroy the monster. With explosive power, he hurls the glowing magical spear, tearing through the road like a bolt of lightning. The piercing spear slams directly into the beast face, exploding into a bright shock wave of radiant golden light. Pure shock washes over him when his spell is completely nullified, proving the creature's magical power surpasses his own. When the smoke finally clears, the giant monster has completely vanished, leaving behind only an ominous silence. Sensing an ambush in the shadows, he snaps his head around and angrily demands the hidden creature reveal itself. Bubbling black fluid suddenly rises beneath his feet, pinning his boots to the ground before he can jump away. A giant spiked shadow tail emerges from the dark puddle behind him, aiming a lethal strike at his back. The brutal shadow appendage crashes down with crushing velocity, ripping through the air to obliterate everything in its path. He barely raises his arms to guard, but the sheer force shatters his defenses and hurls him backward in blood. Wounded and bleeding, he grimaces in frustration, recognizing this mutated beast is far beyond what an ordinary knight can handle. Skidding forcefully across the dirt trail, the veteran struggles to regain his balance while clutching his bleeding side. He realizes with sinking dread that he has run into an exceptionally high-level corpse puppet in these remote mountains. The mutated abomination roars violently, raising its grotesque claw high as dark energy pulsates around its massive frame. Facing the towering shadow monster, the battered knight stands his ground, fully aware this battle could cost him his life. Refusing to go down quietly, he resolves to drag the corrupted abomination into death right alongside him. Clenching his teeth with fierce resolve, he prepares to gamble his entire life on one last counterattack. A sudden burst of deadly momentum tears through the trees as the monster charges in for the kill. Channeling every ounce of remaining mana into his right hand, he prepares to stab straight through the lunging creature. The corpse puppet swoops downward with savage ferocity, extending its razor-sharp claws to rip him to shreds. Screaming at the top of his lungs, he thrusts his blazing golden fist upward to meet the fatal attack. A blinding explosion of golden mana ignites against the darkness in a desperate, earth-shaking clash of raw power. The overwhelming weight of the abomination crashes forward, threatening to crush him before his mana can break through. Towering above him, the corpse puppet rears back its massive claw, aiming to crush the exhausted warrior immediately. Out of nowhere, a blinding azure slash slices through the air, bisecting the massive corpse puppet in a single clean sweep. The veteran freezes in pure shock, his eyes wide as he realizes he was just spared from certain death. Severed clean in half, the massive monster crashes heavily onto the forest floor, collapsing into a heap of dust and smoke. Surrounded by the dissipating haze, the bewildered knight can barely comprehend the overwhelming power behind that sudden strike. He slowly turns his gaze toward the canopy above, desperate to find the person who saved him. Perched among the tall branches, our silver-haired protagonist quietly watches him from the shadows. Our boy lowers his weapon and steps into view, displaying a calm demeanor that defies his youthful appearance. He walks steadily down the dirt path in simple sandals, casually approaching the battle-hardened veteran. The veteran stares at him in disbelief, stunned that such an absurdly powerful strike came from someone so young. Facing each other in the quiet woods, the knight decides to cut straight to the point with a much simpler question. He looks the boy in the eye and asks why he went out of his way to save a stranger. Our boy offers a subtle grin, preparing to give an answer the seasoned warrior did not quite expect. Later that evening inside a warm mountain lodge, a large white wolf rests quietly on the wooden floorboards. Sitting opposite one another near the glowing fireplace, The veteran rubs his forehead while processing everything he just learned. The peaceful white beast sleeps between them as the conversation continues in the cozy glow of the hearth. He explains his genuine motives, speaking with complete sincerity about why he chose to step into the fight. The veteran listens intently, realizing there is not a single trace of deception behind the young man's words. He leans back into his wooden chair, finally letting his guard down now that he understands the truth. Sitting relaxed with his hands in his lap, he waits patiently for the veteran to make up his mind. He offers a gentle, reassuring smile that makes it impossible for the older knight to stay suspicious. A fond grin spreads across the veteran's scarred face as he lets out an amused chuckle of relief. He beams with a bright, cheerful laugh, sealing a newfound bond of genuine friendship between them. Suddenly, the massive corpse puppet slams down onto the mountain path with terrifying force, sending shockwaves through the forest. Winds howl through the trees as the scarred warrior realizes a monstrous threat is about to wipe them both out. Backing away, the veteran shouts that this creature is way out of their league and normally requires a noble knight to defeat. He urgently orders he to sprint ahead, warn the village chief, and get all the innocent villagers evacuated immediately. The massive corpse puppet towers before them, its single glowing green eye burning with pure malice as tentacles writhe in the shadows. Stepping forward alone, the veteran ignites his fist with blazing fire, bracing to buy whatever precious time he can. Though he talked tough, deep down he knows he cannot survive against such an overwhelming monster for long. Suddenly, something strange catches his attention on the ground below, breaking his focus right before the clash. Right beside him, a heavy stone slowly lifts off the grass, enveloped in a radiant blue aura defying all gravity. Glancing back, the veteran is stunned to realize this quiet young dweller had not even used a fraction of his power. His eyes widen in utter disbelief as the magical pressure around them suddenly spikes to an unbelievable level. Giant boulders rip straight out of the earth, floating effortlessly into the sky under an intense surge of telekinetic mana. Dozens of sharp rock fragments rise all around them, turning the entire forest into a floating storm of deadly projectiles. Radiating brilliant blue power, he stands ready for battle, proving this was never reckless bravado but pure, undisputed strength. Looking back with a confident smirk, our silver-haired protagonist prepares to wipe the monster out without breaking a sweat. Massive shadow wraith looms over the battlefield, glaring down with a sinister glowing green eye as dark energy crackles around its rocky form. Tyran rises into the air surrounded by swirling gale-force winds, leaving the seasoned mage behind him completely frozen in awe. A calm smirk spreads across Tyran's face, because he already knows the power he is about to unleash on this beast. The bearded mage ignites both hands in fiery mana, preparing to step into the fight before things get out of hand. The towering wraith screeches and lunges forward with savage fury, unleashing a deadly wave of corrupted energy straight at them. Tyran stands firm without flinching a single inch, keeping his focus locked onto the charging monster right in front of him. A blinding shock wave of compressed wind cuts across the forest, forcing the bearded mage to shield his eyes from the pressure. Tyran's razor-sharp wind gale collides directly with the beast, detonating into a massive blast that pushes the creature back. The mage stares down at his own fiery palm, realizing with frustration that his reflexes were far too slow to even react. He clenches his glowing hand in quiet defeat, admitting to himself that stepping into this direct clash would only drag Tyran down. His true mission is clear now. He must focus entirely on supporting Tyran so the boy's immense talent can truly awaken. Tyran unleashes an overwhelming storm of gale magic, whipping up a tempest across the entire clearing to tear through the monster's defense. A radiant cross-slash of wind slices across the wraith's torso, detonating in a blinding flash that should have shattered its armor. Tyran points his finger forward while catching his breath, carefully studying the dense smoke to see if the beast went down. The wraith charges straight through the blast completely unharmed, forcing Tyran to jump back as his initial plan fails to finish it. The bearded mage screams out in pure panic, warning Tyran that physical wind attacks cannot break through a wraith's immortal body. A deafening crash echoes through the forest as the colossal monster stomps the ground, shattering the earth beneath its weight. The towering beast looms directly over Tyran, forcing our boy to quickly rethink his strategy before the next attack lands. Tyran reaches out with an open hand, completely composed as he decides to switch his magical element on the fly. His silver eye gleams with absolute precision, locking onto the exact point of connection needed to trigger his next spell. A sudden burst of bright orange flame ignites directly on the monster's shoulder, burning through its spiritual outer shell without warning. Tyran glances back with cold detachment, fully aware of how impossible this technique looks to any ordinary spectator. The bearded mage stares in utter disbelief, because applying magic directly onto an enemy requires establishing complex causality beforehand. A terrifying thought crosses the mage's mind, as he wonders if Tyran was the one who originally slayed this creature before. Tyran leaps into the air and unleashes another point-blank shock wave, blasting fragments off the wraith's stony hide with immense power. Looking up with intense focus, Tyran tracks the monster's movements and prepares to channel an even greater surge of mana. He vaults through the air with effortless speed, positioning himself to strike the lumbering titan once more. Knowing pure wind magic was ineffective, Tyran prepares to switch tactics and overwhelm the monster. His feet skid hard against the dirt, braking with sharp precision so he can firmly ground his stance for what comes next. While creating ordinary fire is simple for any trained mage, Tyran prepares to take the spell to an absurd new scale. Facing down the monstrous beast, he understands that producing fire is easy, but channeling it effectively is the real challenge. He thrusts his blazing palm high toward the sky, igniting a colossal vortex of raging fire that leaves the veteran mage stunned. Tyran digs his heel into the ground and launches forward with explosive force, closing the distance in a fraction of a second. Channeling his destructive mana into a single point, he thrusts his fiery fist directly toward the wraith's core. A monumental pillar of fire erupts downward with cataclysmic force, crushing the monster under an overwhelming torrent of raging heat. The wraith screeches in horrific agony as the searing flames engulf its head, incinerating its corrupted flesh from the inside out. Raging flames completely swallow the massive creature, reducing its indestructible body into charred cinders within a matter of seconds. Tyran holds his casting stance with cold composure, letting the residual flames swirl around his arm as the beast perishes. His sharp gaze remains fixed on the blaze, vigilantly ensuring that no dark remnants of the monster can possibly regenerate. The final pieces of the wraith's corrupted form disintegrate within the raging inferno, scattering to ash in the scorching wind. His mind reels as he realizes that taking down a beast of that caliber usually requires an elite strike team. The veteran mage stares in utter disbelief, his wide eyes trembling as he witnesses the impossible feat unfold before him. Yet Tyran stands calmly in the clearing, completely unfazed beside the giant smoking skeleton of the defeated monster. Maintaining a perfectly grounded stance, our boy shows that unleashing such devastating magic took almost nothing out of his actual physical stamina. Approaching the clearing, the veteran instructs him to absorb the beast's lingering mana, leaving Tyran wondering how to even begin. Following the veteran's guidance, Tyran extends his open hand toward the charred skeleton to draw its energy inward. Closing his eyes, he focuses his senses completely, attempting to pull the beast's ambient essence directly into his core. A vibrant swirl of pure green mana begins seeping from the monster's remains, answering the pull of his intent. The glowing energy gathers speed as it rises into the air, spiraling across the clearing like a living current. Tyran guides the radiant orb straight into his open hand, smoothly absorbing the monster's raw essence without any resistance. His eyes open, glowing with a deep emerald hue as the foreign energy begins fusing directly with his mana pool. Vibrant green circuits instantly illuminate beneath his skin, surging through his arm and spreading across his entire torso. The massive influx of power rushes through his pathways, rapidly expanding the natural limits of his mana vessels. Energy floods his nervous system in a blinding web of light, integrating the absorbed essence deep into his foundation. This intense rush settles smoothly into his core, solidifying the newly acquired strength without causing a single shred of backlash. A sudden jolt washes through his body, making him flinch as his physical form adjusts to the new mana density. The mage reassures him that the strange sensation is completely natural when assimilating foreign energy for the first time. Tyran clenches his fist to test his grip, while the veteran stares at his back in complete disbelief. Feeling the undeniable surge coursing through his veins, Tyran realizes how much stronger this single absorption has made him. The veteran explains that, although mana naturally increases as one ages, the fastest path to immense power is hunting dangerous monsters and absorbing their essence, a method practiced by elite mages across the continent. Yet cold sweat drips down his face, as he remembers this was Tyran's very first time absorbing mana. Wielding high-tier destructive spells without ever harvesting mana means the boy's innate potential is on an astronomical scale. He realizes this quiet young shepherd possesses terrifying talent capable of overturning the balance of the continent. Noticing the intense stare, Tyran looks over with quiet curiosity, completely oblivious to the shock brewing inside the mage. The veteran clutches his injured side, trying to keep his composure despite the severe wounds sustained during the fight. Tyran quickly offers a gentle look, urging the injured traveler to let him treat the worsening wounds immediately. Fresh blood suddenly bursts through the mage's sleeve, forcing them to head inside immediately to treat the wound. Back inside the quiet cabin, the injured veteran rests comfortably with his arm securely bound in a clean medical sling. Setting down medical supplies on the table, Tyran brushes off the mage's repeated apologies for making such a talent serve him. He insists that he is merely an ordinary shepherd who never even knew his father, asking the man to stop the flattery. Tyran shoots him a sharp, deadpan glare, until the intimidated veteran quickly raises his hands and promises to drop it. Outside the wooden cabin, gentle bleats from the grazing flock echo peacefully while an important conversation begins inside. The sheep graze peacefully around the sturdy fence, completely separated from the serious revelations unfolding just behind the cabin walls. Sitting by the hearth, Tyran quietly reveals that his mother passed away long ago, leaving behind only a few final wishes. The veteran leans in upon hearing her dying request, noting that noble families indeed hold power down at the mountain base. Tyran shares what little guidance she left behind, prompting the wounded traveler to piece together clues about the boy's lineage. With a calm expression, our boy listens patiently, eager to discover what connection his quiet life has to the outside world. Between them rests a wooden box, as the veteran weighs his words carefully before unveiling secrets about the great factions below. Breaking the silence, the veteran admits that what Tyran's mother warned him about nobility was not wrong at all. The scarred veteran locks eyes with him, preparing to recount the legendary names and fierce conflicts dominating the outside realm. He brings up House Zahar, describing how powerful noble bloodlines waged catastrophic, blazing wars to establish dominion over the realm. Tyran takes in every detail, recognizing the immense weight of the warrior heritage that the traveler is laying out before him. The veteran speaks openly with Tyran across the table, sharing his own past experiences and lessons learned from a lifetime of combat. Tyran listens intently to the seasoned traveler, absorbing every piece of wisdom while reflecting on everything that has transpired. The veteran recalls his master Hartman, a strict instructor who constantly scolded him for having so much left to learn. Smiling through the bittersweet memory, he admits that despite all those rigorous lessons, he was still thoroughly humbled today. Tyran simply takes in the compliment with quiet modesty, refusing to let any hint of arrogance cloud his judgment. Scratching his head sheepishly, the veteran chuckles over how an unassuming mountain youth managed to outshine seasoned warriors. He reminds Tyran directly that when fatal disaster loomed earlier, Tyran alone took down the terrifying wraith. Tyran listens thoughtfully to the warrior's honest appraisal, keeping his grounded demeanor steady despite the heavy compliment. Resting quietly in his chair, our boy waits patiently to see what the traveler believes he should do next. Tyran subtly shifts his feet against the carpet, ready to hear whatever direction the experienced fighter has in mind. A gentle smile touches Tyran's face as he openly expresses his gratitude for the veteran's guidance. Pushing back from the wooden table, the veteran rises to his feet, having reached a clear decision on what comes next. Walking toward the exit, he declares that it is finally time for Tyran to step out into the wider world. The veteran explains how ancient races cast aside by the gods sparked massive shifts, reshaping the continent across countless centuries. Countless warriors rose and fell throughout those chaotic eras, creating endless opportunities for true champions to carve out their destiny. Pausing at the open doorway bathed in sunlight, the veteran looks back to offer one last piece of valuable advice. Standing firmly on the welcome mat, He prepares to leave while ensuring Tyran understands the grand path waiting ahead. Tyran remains seated inside the cabin, quietly contemplating the veteran's parting words that could alter his entire future. With a genuine grin, the warrior assures him that extraordinary talent like his will never go unnoticed. The seasoned warrior strides outside into the brilliant daylight, confident their paths will cross again on a grander stage. Silence settles back over the cozy room as the immense weight of the warrior's proposal lingers in the air. Resting beside the wall, the traveler's weapons stand quiet as the suggestion of being adopted by nobility hangs in the air. Stepping out into the wide valley, the veteran looks back once more, certain this young shepherd is destined for greatness. Standing under the vast open sky, Tyran smiles quietly to himself, feeling the stirring beginnings of a brand new path. Turning back toward the boy, the veteran pauses to ask one more crucial question about his experience with magic. Tyran tilts his head in genuine confusion, wondering why an experienced warrior would ask him about something so fundamental. With a knowing smile, the veteran explains that true affinity begins with how effortlessly spell connects to the body. It all comes down to the core mana vessel, where innate talent dictates how smoothly energy flows through a caster. The veteran sparks a flame in his hand, asking if Tyran has any spell that feels completely natural and effortless. Tyran clenches his fist modestly, questioning whether finding magic easy really proves that he possesses any true strength. The gentle breeze rustles across the pond lilies, highlighting just how sheltered Tyran has been from the wider world. Chuckling behind his hand, the veteran finds our boy's total lack of self-awareness both hilarious and astonishing. Tyran blinks in surprise, asking why the older warrior is suddenly staring at him with such an odd expression. The lighthearted mood drops instantly, as the veteran's face darkens with a chilling, solemn weight. His hand clenches into a white-knuckled fist, trembling slightly as dark memories claw their way back. Tyran watches him closely, sensing the heavy shift in emotion radiating from the battle-hardened man before him. The warrior presses his lips into a grim line, struggling to suppress a flood of unspoken agony. Both men stand together outside the cabin, where the peaceful mountain air suddenly turns heavy with buried trauma. Years ago on a rain-swept battlefield, a soldier collapsed in total despair over the bloodied body of his fallen comrade. His fallen ally lies lifeless in the mud, another tragic casualty of this merciless war. That raw agony carved deep scars into his soul, defining the terrible cost of true power on the battlefield. An agonizing scream tears from his throat, fueled by absolute fury and heartbreak under the pouring rain. That desperate roar carries all the pain and helplessness of failing to protect someone he held dear. The deafening cry echoes endlessly into the storm, lingering like an unhealable wound. Tyran stands completely frozen in shock. The heavy weight of the situation finally hits him as he stares wide-eyed. Tyran stares in shock after learning the truth about his heritage, struggling to process the revelation he just received. Hearing that he carries the blood of House Zahar hits him like a brick, linking him directly to a notorious lineage. It means his own ancestors fought as bitter enemies against the veteran elder, standing right in front of him. Tyran wonders if he should apologize, even though these infamous relatives are strangers he has never once met. The scarred warrior notices his hesitation and breaks into a gentle smile, instantly sensing the heavy burden weighing on the boy. He reminds Tyran that the old war was strictly adult business, freeing him from any inherited guilt. With a warm grin across his scarred face, the veteran makes it clear that past bloodshed will never dictate their bond. He tells Tyran that no matter what blood runs in his veins, who he becomes is entirely his own choice. Tyran lets out a quiet breath, completely caught off guard by such genuine forgiveness and warmth. Standing side by side under the open sky, the lingering tension completely dissolves between them. Our boy smiles in quiet gratitude, feeling lighter now that this massive family secret is finally out in the open. The scarred elder turns toward the cabin, ready to move past the heavy history and get down to business. He glances back with a steady look, asking Tyran if he is truly prepared to take the next big step forward. The veteran approves of his choice with a reassuring nod, calling it a good decision. That answer earns a broad smile from the old warrior, who is thrilled to see such maturity in the kid. Tyran promises to begin training once the elder's wounds have fully healed. Inside the sunlit wooden cabin, They prepare for a serious lesson on the core fundamentals of magic. The veteran sits across the wooden table, ready to explain how real spellcasting actually functions in this world. He explains that magic requires matching mana, debunking the common myth that spellcraft works as an absolute, unyielding rule. When Tyran asks what determines a person's magic, the veteran lays out the three fundamental pillars. Holding up 3 fingers, the warrior lists bloodline as the first pillar, affinity as the second, and causality as the final mystery. Tyran listens with intense focus, absorbing every single detail about how these 3 forces govern innate magical ability. The veteran rests his hand on the table, confirming that innate talent often stems directly from one's ancestral blood. He details how bloodline grants raw power without formal training, just like Ravista's lineage, before moving on to elemental affinity. Curious about his own potential, Tyran asks how someone actually discovers which elemental affinity aligns with their mana. The warrior rises from his seat to demonstrate the concept firsthand, rather than just lecturing about theory. Looking down at the cup of water, he admits that even experienced warriors struggle to master every subtle aspect of mana. He positions himself directly above the mug, telling Tyran to watch closely as he channels his personal energy. He notes that infusing mana into ordinary liquids is the fastest method to reveal an elemental nature. Hovering his palm over the cup, crackling electric sparks immediately surge through the air and into the drink. The liquid violently fizzes with pure lightning mana, proving the old warrior's undeniable affinity for lightning. Stepping aside, the veteran invites Tyran to place his hands over the cup and test his own mana. Our boy reaches out, and the instant his mana touches the cup, roaring flames erupt into a brilliant blaze. The scarred warrior pumps his fist in pure excitement, thrilled to see such an explosive flame affinity burst to life on the very first try. From outside the quiet cabin window, the cozy afternoon settles in as Tyran's magical training officially gets underway. Tyran considers the veteran advice on combining elements, realizing stealth magic might be the exact technique he needs next. Tyran crosses his arms in deep concentration, weighing whether his newly awakened flame mana can blend seamlessly with concealment. The scarred warrior explains that elite scouts specialize in masking presence and tracking, urging the boy to give it an honest shot. Tyran pushes his chair back and stands up, ready to put the veteran's stealth advice to the test. Tyran closes his eyes and focuses on erasing his presence, determined to mask his sound, scent, and visual silhouette entirely. Rippling waves of refined mana wash over his face, bending the surrounding light as his elemental control activates instantly. The scarred warrior watches closely, his eyes widening when he realizes the young man's mana is already harmonizing with the air. In an instant, Tyran vanishes completely from the rug, leaving behind only faint traces of swirling air to prove he was ever there. The seasoned veteran freezes in pure disbelief, stunned that complete beginner managed total optical camouflage on his very first attempt. The quiet cabin remains utterly still for several long moments, while the warrior scans every corner of the room in vain. A subtle ripple glides silently across the carpet, leaving no physical footsteps or scent trails in its wake. Shimmering light refracts near the counter as Tyran dissolves his camouflage, stepping smoothly back into plain sight. His feet touch down firmly on the patterned rug, completing a flawless demonstration of advanced concealment. Our boy clenches his fist with newfound confidence, thrilled to feel how naturally the sensory camouflage clicked into place. A proud smile spreads across the scarred warrior's face, thrilled to see such raw genius blooming right before him. Approaching Tyran, the veteran promises to pass down several higher-tier training methods before their brief mentorship comes to a close. Tyran listens intently, absorbing every bit of combat wisdom his mentor is willing to share. The veteran wraps up his final lesson with a warm grin, satisfied that his student is ready for whatever comes next. Back out in the village square, the local broker gasps in sheer terror when he spots someone unexpected approaching. Tyran strolls calmly down the street with his full travel pack, looking completely unfazed by the commotion he's causing. He comes to a halt right before the townsfolk, his steady stance instantly silencing the gathered crowd. Our boy chuckles softly at their panicked expressions, thoroughly amused by how terrified these shady villagers have become. The bold broker stumbles backward alongside his thugs, paralyzed with dread as he realizes Tyran survived impossible odds. The bandaged thug stares wide-eyed, completely helpless against a warrior who crushed a beast they thought would finish him. Knowing defiance is suicide, the thug prepares to hand over the rightful bounty without putting up a single shred of resistance. The sweating broker grits his teeth in frustration, recognizing that broken promises with this monster would only cost them their lives. Tyran securely takes the heavy pouch of gold coins, claiming the full payment owed for clearing out the monster threat. Leaving the town behind, Tyran walks alongside the scarred veteran, who casually tells him he is free to choose his own path. Tyran turns toward his companion, slightly surprised by the sudden shift in conversation. With a sly grin, the veteran bluntly asks if Tyran was the mysterious fighter who took down the magical beast earlier. They arrive at a quiet crossroads in the forest where the path splits, marking the official end of their shared journey. The scarred warrior admits he prefers wandering solo, wishing his young pupil good fortune on the road ahead. Tyran bows slightly and offers heartfelt thanks for everything the veteran taught him during their short time together. The veteran closes his eyes with a satisfied smirk, telling Tyran to stay sharp and take good care of himself. With a bright, confident smile, Tyran heads forward into his next adventure, stronger and more prepared than ever before. The scarred veteran walks away into the misty forest, leaving his pupil behind to begin a brand new solo journey. Tyran watches him go, taking a moment to reflect on everything he learned from his brief time with the warrior. A sudden memory of his childhood flashes through his mind, recalling the quiet days back home among the sheep and meadows. Shaking off the nostalgia, our boy adjusts his heavy backpack and watches his mentor disappear completely into the tree line. His boots trudge across the dry ground as the lush green forest gives way to an unforgiving wasteland. Harsh desert winds whip across the barren expanse, kicking up clouds of stinging dust in every direction. The barren trail leads deep into a jagged canyon, where steep rocky cliffs tower over the desolate pass. Tyran pulls his white hood over his head to shield himself from the heat, navigating the narrow pass completely alone. Raising a hand to shield his eyes from the dust, he spots movement further down the canyon trail. His silver eyes narrow as he locks onto the cloaked figures trudging across the sand. A band of hooded travelers trudges through the desert, hauling a wooden supply cart across the open sands. Hoping to get his bearings, Tyran approaches the group and politely asks them for directions through the valley. The one-eyed bearded leader turns to face him, silently sizing up the lone traveler standing before them. Tyran nods innocently, thanking them for the helpful directions and preparing to be on his way. But before he can take another step, the cloaked men fan out and surround him from every angle. A heavy boot stomps down right in front of him, instantly cutting off his path forward. A crooked thug blocks his escape with a vile grin, making it clear they never intended to let him pass. Our boy looks at them calmly, fully aware that this harmless traveling caravan was just an ambush. Blades slide from their sheaths as the bandits bare their steel, completely cornering Tyran in the open sands. Even with a drawn blade pointed straight at his spine, Tyran just glances back with an easy smile. The one-eyed leader rests his broadsword on his shoulder and laughs, pointing out that nobody out here will ever care if a traveler goes missing. A thug presses the cold tip of a sword against Tyran's neck, demanding he hand over his belongings without a fight. The scarred leader glares with cruel anticipation, waiting for the young traveler to break down and beg for mercy. Back during their journey, Tyran remembers sitting across from the scarred veteran inside a quiet tavern. He had conjured a blazing flame above his mug, eager to test the limits of his growing magical power. His mentor had stood up with stern advice, reminding him that true strength only develops through real battles against hostile foes. Back in the present, Tyran flashes a sinister smirk under his hood, deciding these thugs are the perfect target practice. Completely unfazed by the blade at his throat, he gets ready to teach these bandits a brutal lesson. Tyran finds himself surrounded in the desert by a gang of hooded bandits with swords drawn. They laugh, thinking he is an easy target. Unfazed by the threat, Tyran discreetly gathers magic in his hand. He prepares to unleash an elemental strike. Calling upon the wind, Tyran unleashes a powerful blast that sends the bandits flying in all directions. The ambush is shattered in seconds. Tyran realizes that manually shaping the spell before amplifying it uses significantly less mana than raw casting. The bandits crash hard onto the sand, while he marvels at the massive, destructive power produced with minimal mana. Deciding to test his control even further, Tyran draws a stream of water directly out of his canteen. He condenses the floating liquid into razor-sharp ice crystals, honing his elemental magic on the fly. Armed with multiple floating ice blades, Tyran prepares to test their piercing power against the hostile thugs. One of the fallen thugs scrambles back to his feet, determined to charge in and strike him down. The hooded thug lunges recklessly with a wild grin, convinced he can overwhelm Tyran before another spell activates. Tyran launches the ice spikes with pinpoint accuracy, piercing straight through the bandit and stopping him in his tracks. Evaluating the spell, Tyran finds the ice projectiles decent, though not quite as swift as he hoped. He honestly figures that hurling a heavy rock with brute strength might actually be faster and hit harder. The eye-patch bandit drops his dagger and raises a trembling hand, utterly terrified of the young mage before him. Before Tyran can accept the surrender, 3 more bandits drop from above in a vicious surprise ambush. Tyran stands completely unfazed, calmly bracing his mana as the ambushers close in with their weapons. He stomps his boot firmly into the dirt to channel earth magic straight through the ground. Massive stone pillars erupt violently from the sand, instantly impaling all 3 attackers high in the air. The eye-patch bandit stares up in absolute horror as his comrades are wiped out in an instant. Towering beneath the bloody stone pillars, Tyran looks down with a chilling glare that crushes any remaining resistance. Tyran demands to know why they attacked so recklessly, and the terrified survivor begs for his life, swearing to answer. He looks down at the cowering thug, calmly weighing whether this bandit is worth keeping alive. His cold gaze lingers on the thug, contemplating the harsh realities of surviving in this lawless territory. The bandit shivers uncontrollably under Tyran's scrutiny, completely paralyzed by the overwhelming difference in power between them. Tyran listens closely as the pathetic thug suddenly opens his mouth to make a desperate plea for survival. Clinging to a desperate sliver of hope, the bandit frantically asks if he is actually going to be spared. A solitary water droplet condenses directly above the bandit's forehead, leaving him paralyzed with sheer dread. Memories of his past mentor flash through Tyran's mind, recalling one crucial piece of advice. His mentor warned him never to show mercy to ruthless bandits when traveling out in the wild. Remembering that sparing one bandit might endanger 10 innocent lives, Tyran ruthlessly executes the thug. Shaking off the past lesson, Tyran mutters to himself that he has wasted far too much time here. Tyran turns on his heel and sets off across the sandy wasteland to resume his solitary trek. He marches forward alone across the vast desert dunes, leaving the bloody aftermath behind in the dust. Glancing back over his shoulder one last time, he makes sure no other hidden threats are tracking him. Tyran knew that anyone choosing the path of banditry in the wild was driven by pure greed. Any bloodthirsty thug foolish enough to cross his path would inevitably meet a swift and merciless end. Reaching the edge of a rocky cliff, his boots step onto solid ground as the arid wasteland ends. Standing high above the expanse, Tyran gazes out toward the horizon under the vast open sky. A breath of genuine wonder escapes his lips as he takes in the breathtaking view before him. Stepping up to the edge of the rocky overlook, his long journey across the wasteland finally brings him within sight of his destination. Stepping into the lively city streets, Tyran finds himself surrounded by the vibrant energy of townspeople and cheerful children going about their day. Gazing up in awe, he marvels at the towering stone architecture, realizing how drastically different this grand city is from his quiet village. Carrying his heavy travel pack, our young traveler makes his way through the bustling market street, where merchants shout their daily wares. Approaching a local fruit stand, Tyran politely explains he is just seeking directions to a nearby inn where he can find lodging. The bearded traveler gives Tyran some practical advice about finding lodging. He tells him every settlement usually has an inn to stay at. Instead of helping, the cranky shopkeeper scowls and rudely shoos him away for daring to ask questions without buying any fruit. Stunned by the cold reception, Tyran wonders if city everyone follow an unspoken rule requiring customers to purchase fruit before getting any answers. Deciding to play along with the local customs, he points directly toward the fresh red apples neatly stacked across the merchant's wooden counter. Reaching into his pockets, He pulls out several shiny coins to pay the man up front and secure the information he needs. He drops the shiny coin directly into the vendor's eager hand, smoothly trading his cash for the location of the nearest inn. Following the merchant's directions, he quickly finds himself standing before a welcoming tavern sign marked as a pub and inn. The moment he steps inside, an upbeat blonde worker greets him with a beaming smile and welcomes him to the establishment. Known around the establishment as inn worker Lena, she prepares to help the newcomer get properly situated after his long journey. Clasping her hands together with excitement, she brightly informs him that a room for the night will cost exactly 16 ducats. Turan's hands over a pouch of coins, prompting Lena to ask if there are any specific questions he wants answered. Cradling the money pouch in her hands, she looks at the silver-haired traveler, waiting to hear what brought him here. When Turan asks why city everyone are so tight-lipped, she happily winks and shows off her shiny tip. Lena openly points out that nothing in this world is ever truly free, making money the easiest way to loosen anyone's lips. Stepping across the tavern floorboards, she comes over to join him so they can properly discuss what the city has to offer. Surrounded by heavy oak barrels of ale, the rustic tavern offers them quiet corner where they can freely share valuable local advice. Holding a wooden mug in hand, our boy innocently asks what this city hall place she mentioned actually does. Lena leans across the wooden table in total shock, baffled that a grown man has never heard of a basic city hall. Turan maintains an earnest expression, having grown up completely isolated from the systems that run ordinary urban civilization. Realizing he genuinely knows nothing about the world, she patiently prepares to break down how city administration and daily life work. She explains how City Hall manages official business, resident registrations, and licenses for anyone trying to earn a living in town. As the waitress begins walking away, Turan stops her with a totally clueless question. He asks what a monster hunter actually is. She describes how elite mages wield incredible magical power, hunting dangerous beasts across the realm for immense glory and prestige. Suddenly, a heavy calloused hand clamps down firmly onto Turan's shoulder, interrupting their quiet conversation out of nowhere. Towering over him with a cocky grin is a muscular warrior named Midden, a local monster hunter eager to talk. Midden makes a boisterous scene right in the middle of the tavern, drawing the eyes of Lena and nearby patrons. With a booming laugh, the rowdy hunter ignores the annoyed glare Turan shoots right back at him. Composing himself, Turan turns around calmly to face the boisterous hunter and see what business he actually has with him. Resting her chin on her hand, Lena lets out a weary sigh, completely drained by these noisy hunters causing a scene. Midden shows off his crew with a grin, explaining they hunt monsters to earn the resources needed to become mages. Hearing that monster hunters can pursue magic instantly grabs Turan's interest, since mastering spells is his ultimate goal. Seeing the rookie show interest, Midden flashes a friendly smile and asks what kind of combat weapons he can use. In response, our boy reaches into his gear and pulls out his handmade slingshot to display his weapon of choice. Examining the slingshot, Midden admits that having another ranged shooter would be ideal for hunting smaller beasts like foxes or rabbits. Listening to the sudden proposition, Turan stands quietly and considers the hunter's offer to join their group. Hearing the hunter's offer, Turan flashes a confident smirk, realizing this party could be his golden ticket to learning magic. Later that night, Turan sprawls out across his bed at the inn, finally getting a chance to rest and gather his thoughts after arriving in the bustling town. He lets out a heavy sigh, staring up at the ceiling and reflecting on how chaotic today was. Mana crackles across his fingertips as he quietly wonders what unexpected challenges lie ahead on his journey. A sudden noise right outside his room instantly snaps him out of his reverie, prompting him to sit up on high alert. Deep in thought, he recalls walking through the fog with his mentor, questioning if vigilance is really needed inside an inn. His master had smiled and reminded him that dropping your guard in an unfamiliar place is the fastest way to get killed. Taking the lesson to heart back then, Turan had gladly promised to always remain prepared for any hidden ambush. Returning to the present, Mana gathers fiercely around his fingertips as he cautiously creeps toward the door, fully prepared to strike down any potential intruder. Opening the heavy door just a sliver, he narrows his eyes to carefully inspect whoever is standing outside. His sharp silver eye locks onto the late-night visitor, ready to unleash an attack if things turn dangerous. Instead of an assassin, the cheerful maid greets him with a sweet smile and asks if he was sleeping. Tyran stands there utterly bewildered, completely caught off guard by such an unexpected and harmless late-night encounter. She blushes deeply and fiddles with her collar, teasingly asking what he meant by that. Late at night, a tavern maid appears outside Tyran's room, catching our boy right as he opens the door. Stepping forward onto the wooden floorboards, she closes the distance between them without the slightest hesitation. Leaning right against his chest, she smiles flirtatiously and whispers that she can see exactly what he wants on his face. Instead of getting flustered, our boy achieves instant enlightenment, turning his face into a completely emotionless Buddha statue. Her seductive mood shatters instantly, leaving her staring at his ridiculous blank expression in utter shock and disbelief. The awkward moment sparks a sudden memory of his old master back home, screaming his lungs out during training. Out in the open pastures, Tyran spent his youth enduring endless scoldings while surrounded by noisy, bleating sheep. Even back then, he weathered every single angry lecture with that exact same calm, unbothered stare. Thoroughly embarrassed by his total lack of interest, the girl stomps down the staircase with her cheeks burning red. Settling onto his bed, Tyran's mind shifts toward a far more intriguing topic that caught his attention earlier. Downstairs, a crew of rough warriors marches through the lodge, led by a heavily built fighter with a headband. A subtle grin spreads across Tyran's face as he listens to the heavy footsteps echoing from below. His sharp gaze narrows in the dim room, already weighing his options for the busy days ahead. The man leading the group is none other than Midden, a celebrated monster hunter famous across the entire region. Knowing such a high-profile hunter is staying under the same roof brings a confident smirk to Tyran's lips. He relaxes back onto his pillow, letting sleep take over before his real business begins at dawn. Come sunrise, he gears up in his light traveler robes and prepares to test the local waters. He heads straight for the central guild hall, where contracts and dangerous hunting requests are posted daily. Inside the spacious office, a mustached clerk looks up from his desk and asks how he can assist him. Leaning against the counter, Tyran bluntly asks the man what kind of warrior he looks like at first glance. The guild clerk gives him an unimpressed look, clearly seeing nothing more than a fresh-faced amateur with no real experience. His old master used to smile warmly, knowing the harsh world outside would never treat a young wanderer with kindness. Years on the pastures taught Tyran that nobody owes a stranger any favors, especially when facing dangerous, untamed lands. Snapping back to reality, the clerk hands over an official bounty request, featuring a drawing of an avian beast. Tyran inspects the parchment carefully, asking if the target creature belongs to a standard crow-type monster species. The clerk warns him to bring any slain beast back to town, explaining that uncleared mana turns corpses into wraiths. Tyran calmly cuts him off, stating that he is already well aware of how monster corruption works. If left rotting in the wild, the residual magic inside a beast festers into a shadowy, demonic abomination. The clerk scoffs at his confidence, asking if he thinks city mages have spare time to clean up rookie messes. He firmly presses his hand over the flyer, bluntly stating that hunting outside the city is far beyond a punk's capabilities. Tyran takes the warning in stride and turns toward the exit, having gathered all the information he needed. As our boy walks through the lobby, Labba sits quietly on a waiting bench, resting on his wooden cane while watching him go. The receptionist shakes his head and returns to his paperwork, writing the boy off as another reckless novice destined to fail. Little does the clerk realize, Tyran is already staring into the glazed, lifeless eye of a fallen creature. Before him lies a slain crow monster, pierced straight through the chest by a clean, lethal strike. The guild clerk breaks into a cold sweat, staring down in absolute disbelief at how quickly this supposedly suicidal hunt was finished. Guild staff gather around the slain crow beast laid across the floor, unable to fathom how a rookie brought down such a monster single-handedly. Tyran keeps his composure, bluntly asking if this confirms the kill so he can finally collect his bounty. Stammering under the pressure, the receptionist quickly orders his assistant to fetch the reward money without delay. A heavy sack of coins drops right into Tyran's waiting palm, proving his critics wrong in the most satisfying way possible. The guild workers inspect the carcass closer, stunned to find that even the rare blade wings remain completely flawless and undamaged. Pocketing his earnings, Our boy turns to head out while the bewildered clerk watches him with newfound respect. Before he can reach the exit, the staff call out after him, making him halt his stride across the wooden floor. The receptionist and his coworker exchange bewildered glances, still trying to process the sheer skill of the youth standing before them. Turan turns back with a calm gaze, patiently waiting to hear whatever else the guild staff have to say. Soon after, a mouthwatering spread of roasted meat, hot soup, and rich cheese fills a rustic tavern table. The cheerful blonde waitress proudly presents the massive feast, eager to see how a lone customer handles such a banquet. Steaming bowls and fresh bread cover every inch of the wooden surface, ready to replenish his spent energy. Turan happily digs in, stuffing his face with sausages and soup as he enjoys a well-earned hearty meal. Within minutes, every single platter and wooden bowl on the table is scraped completely clean. Holding his mug, he pauses thoughtfully, taking a quiet moment to reflect on his recent growth. Back in the forest, he had spent hours hunting wild creatures and harvesting their glowing green mana essence. Absorbing magical power directly from fallen beasts allowed his core to strengthen at a frighteningly rapid pace. Back in the present, our boy flexes his fingers, feeling the raw surge of power coursing through his veins. The blonde waitress stares in pure shock, unable to comprehend where all that food could possibly have gone. The burly tavern keeper joins her, both of them staring down at the slender youth in dumbfounded amazement. Wiping the sweat from his brow, the tavern owner just laughs it off, thoroughly impressed by the boy's monster appetite. Having satisfied his hunger, Turan stands up and prepares to leave, ready to move on to his next objective. Suddenly, a rough hand clamps down hard onto his shoulder from behind, forcefully stopping him in his tracks. Two shady bandits corner him with greedy grins, having noticed the heavy pouch of gold he carried earlier. The thug tries to shake him down for a cut of his earnings, only to catch a lightning-fast palm strike straight to the jaw. The concussive blow sends the bully staggering backward across the tavern floor, catching his partner completely off guard. Turan innocently presses his hands together, sarcastically asking if they were just asking for a charitable donation. Enraged by the humiliation, the second ruffian roars and throws a heavy punch aimed right at Turan's head. Slipping easily beneath the wild swing, Turan drives a punishing counterstrike straight into the attacker's exposed midsection. The devastating impact sends the punk crashing face first onto the floorboards, knocking him completely unconscious. The recovered bandit flies into a fury, raising a heavy wooden stool overhead and charging forward to crush him. Without flinching, Turan raises one open hand and stops the falling stool dead in its tracks. Sliding his hand forward in a flash, he clamps his fingers around the attacker's skull with bone-crushing force. The helpless punk groans in agonizing pain as he realizes just how badly they picked the wrong target. The tavern waitress gasps in absolute shock after watching the rowdy thugs get dismantled in seconds. Realizing they are completely outmatched, the gang drops to a low bow to plead for mercy. Turan looks down at the humbled thugs without a shred of anger, waiting to hear their excuse. Their leader bends at the waist, showing complete submission before the overwhelming strength of the young warrior. His terrified lackeys break into a cold sweat, praying their boss can talk them out of another beating. The leader, Midden, sheepishly admits that they only resorted to shaking down travelers because they were desperately broke. Clenching his fist in frustration, the defeated thug braces himself for whatever punishment is coming his way. Instead of delivering another strike, Midden looks up in total disbelief at what is placed before him. Turan casually holds out a small pouch filled with coins, offering an unexpected lifeline to the desperate men. Our protagonist makes a calm proposition, asking to purchase information about the surrounding region rather than starting trouble. Midden's eyes light up with pure relief as he enthusiastically promises to share every secret he knows. Having gathered what he needed, the journey continues onward as Turan heads toward the outskirts of the town. Turan pauses near the edge of the wilderness, taking in the quiet breeze before heading into the dense forest. He reviews the directions Midden gave him, satisfied that he now has a clear route toward his target. Thinking back to their tavern conversation, he reflects on how surprisingly useful the thug's local knowledge turned out to be. Mid-stride, Turan's eyes suddenly widen as his sharp senses pick up a sudden disturbance nearby. Turan catches a distinct scent in the air that immediately stops him in his tracks. His sharp instincts instantly alert him to danger nearby. He launches forward in a burst of speed, darting across the forest floor to investigate the source. Examining a nearby tree, he notices massive claw marks carved deeply into the wood, proving a beast is on the loose. Tyran slows his pace, carefully walking toward a clearing where the scent grows overwhelmingly heavy. Stopping on the dirt trail, he looks ahead as the horrific scene comes into plain view. A traveler sits slumped against the base of a tree, completely covered in blood from fatal, savage wounds. Approaching the mangled body from behind, Tyran braces himself to inspect the unfortunate victim. The fallen man was torn apart with monstrous brutality, leaving his bloodied face frozen in lingering shock. Tyran stands over the corpse in grim silence, processing the sudden and violent tragedy. Looking closer at the dead man's face, a surge of shock hits him as he recognizes the familiar features. The scattered coins from their earlier trade lie abandoned in the crimson pool, proving robbery was not the motive. Crouching down beside Midden's lifeless body, Tyran realizes his informant was brutally slaughtered only moments after their conversation. Tyran kneels in the forest clearing as a dying soldier leans against a tree, barely managing to gasp out a warning before losing consciousness. Blood stains the man's face as he chokes on his own breath, using his final seconds to signal that something lethal approaches. Deep in the tree line, a terrifying creature chews on fresh flesh, dripping dark blood from its razor-sharp front teeth. Tyran turns to find a trail of slaughtered guards scattered across the dirt road, leading straight to the demonic beast feasting in the distance. The monster perks up its jagged, horn-like ears, immediately locking onto Tyran after sensing another living target nearby. Glowing crimson eyes glare from beneath thick white fur, revealing a bloodthirsty horned beast that has already massacred an entire squad. Tyran glances over his shoulder with complete composure, calmly sizing up the predator instead of backing down. The beast propels itself forward with ferocious speed, tearing across the dirt path like an artillery shell aimed straight at Tyran. Tyran grins as he dodges by mere inches, realizing instantly that this monster moves far faster than an ordinary wild creature. The beast digs its paws into the earth, stopping on a dime and growling after realizing its lethal ambush just failed. Tyran wastes no time resetting his stance, smoothly spinning a curved projectile in his grip to seize the offensive. Leaping gracefully into the air, our boy wins back his arm and lines up a pinpoint strike at the distant monster. Tyran hurls the weapon forward with tremendous force, sending a blue streak of energy cutting through the forest clearing. The glowing arc curves rapidly through the air, homing straight toward the beast before it can reposition. Instead of dodging, the creature swings its reinforced spiky ear and slaps the flying weapon right out of the sky. The projectile shatters upon impact against the monster's armored ear, completely neutralizing Tyran's ranged attack. Tyran instantly deduces that this beast is accustomed to defending against thrown weapons, meaning ranged tricks will not finish the job. Digging its powerful hind legs deep into the soil, the monster gears up for another bone-crushing charge. It explodes forward with blinding velocity, kicking up a massive shock wave of air as it closes the gap in a split second. The monstrous shadow looms high above the trees, diving downward with full force to crush Tyran beneath its heavy frame. Tyran braces himself on the path below, tracking the incoming trajectory without flinching as wind violently whips past him. The beast widens its bloodshot crimson eye, fully expecting its brutal dive to crush the prey where he stands. Its attack slams into empty dirt, kicking up dust while Tyran vanishes from the impact zone entirely. Skidding across the ground, the confused beast looks around frantically after realizing its target completely disappeared from sight. Dropping silently from the blind spot overhead, our boy raises his dagger to deliver a lethal sneak attack. The creature senses danger a second too late, as a shadow descends directly onto its exposed neck. Tyran drives the blade deep into the beast's flesh, unleashing a violent burst of blood and staggering the monster instantly. A piercing screech echoes through the woods as the creature thrashes in agony from the devastating puncture wound. Tyran springs backward lightly, cleanly disengaging before the enraged beast can retaliate with a wild counterattack. Blurring into motion, our protagonist dashes through the trees to keep the wounded beast perpetually off balance. A sharp gust sweeps across the grass as Tyran flanks around at top speed, leaving no time for the monster to recover. Tyran strikes from behind with blazing golden slashes, carving through the creature's thick hide before it can even turn. Caught in a relentless flurry, The horned beast reels in pain as rapid cuts rain down across its body. A heavy shock wave ripples through the clearing as Tyran maintains relentless pressure, refusing to give his opponent any breathing room. Tyran unleashes a dazzling storm of blade strikes, completely overwhelming the demonic beast and tearing through its defenses with ruthless precision. The horned beast lets out one final shriek as it crashes heavily among the splintered trees. Dark blood drips steadily from its fresh wounds, pooling into the soil as the monster draws its last breath. With its tongue lolling out in defeat, the dangerous creature finally goes completely limp on the dirt. A trail of dust and steam settles around the clearing as Tyran strides forward to claim his prize. Tyran stands quietly above the slain beast, breathing steadily now that the battle is settled. Reaching his open hand toward the carcass, he prepares to draw out its remaining magical essence. Brilliant emerald energy bursts forth from the monster, spiraling violently into his outstretched palm. Tyran instantly senses that the sheer quantity of mana he just absorbed surpasses anything he felt before. Glowing green veins flare brightly across his face as the immense magical current surges straight through his body. Noticing the injured survivor slumped against a nearby trunk, Tyran hears the man gasp in utter disbelief that he is a mage. The battered man asks why someone with such overwhelming magical power was keeping his identity hidden this entire time. Overcome with relief and sorrow, tears stream down the wounded man's bloodied face as he remembers their fallen comrades. The sight triggers a painful memory for Tyran, recalling his former leader covered in blood during their final moments together. Years ago, that same boss had sat across from him with an easygoing grin, radiating endless confidence. Tyran remembers sitting in the warm tavern together, discussing their grand ambitions over quiet drinks. Back then, Tyran took every single word of guidance to heart, wanting nothing more than to prove his worth. His mentor had smiled warmly, encouraging him to keep pushing forward regardless of whatever hardships lay ahead. Tyran smiled back softly, cherishing those brief moments of brotherhood before everything fell apart. Returning to the present, Tyran stands alone before the silent graves, paying his final respects to his lost comrades. With his resolve firmly settled, he turns away from the graves and takes his first steps toward a new destination. A newfound determination shines in Tyran's eyes as he prepares to make a name for himself in the wider realm. Arriving at a massive settlement, our protagonist joins a bustling queue of travelers waiting along the cobbled street. Tyran chuckles to himself, realizing how small his old world was after being so easily impressed by minor provincial towns. Lifting his head, he stares upward in genuine wonder at the breathtaking spectacle towering before him. An enormous cathedral castle looms over the surrounding landscape, its sharp blue spires piercing high into the sky. The entire inner city unfolds in pristine symmetry, featuring grand courtyards, sculpted hedges, and spotless paved avenues. Broad stone highways cut cleanly across the lush green lawns, directing all traffic toward the fortified outer gate. High watchtowers and reinforced barriers stand guard along every avenue, keeping strict surveillance over everyone entering the territory. Seeing the endless crowd, Tyran marvels at how many people line up daily just to gain entry into the capital. Backpack strapped securely to his shoulders, our boy patiently steps forward in line toward the arched stone entrance. He reflects on how much more organized and disciplined security protocols are within the major cities. Stepping up to the gate, Tyran offers a calm greeting to the hooded sentry stationed at the checkpoint. But before he can take another step, an abrupt gasp from the guard brings him to a sudden halt. The hooded guard trembles in sheer panic, pointing an accusing finger directly at Tyran's face. Tyran places a hand over his chest in confusion, completely clueless as to why the guard is reacting with such terror. A colossal ivory tower stretches straight toward the sky, tangled in massive creeping vines that weave around its high arched windows. Tyran gazes up from the paved courtyard, realizing this colossal structure must be the legendary library Midden told him about. Its sheer scale takes his breath away, proving just how much arcane knowledge is locked behind those ancient walls. Two armed sentries stand guard before the massive ornamental gates, watching everyone who approaches the entrance. Our boy calmly walks up to the threshold, but the guards instantly block his path with cold suspicion. One of the sentries steps forward aggressively, demanding to know what business a scruffy traveler has at the gate. He barks an accusation, demanding to know why Tyran has the audacity to go around pretending to be a mage. The guard extends his open palm straight toward Tyran's chest, aiming to scan his body for traces of magic. Reddish mana pulses across the sentry's fingertips as he forcefully projects his sensory aura forward. Tyran recalls his mentor's lesson that mages can always recognize their own kind by reading the depth of another person's magic. Tyran narrows his gaze and unleashes his inner power, daring the sentry to peer any deeper into his soul. The sentry's mind gets violently engulfed by a monstrous crimson entity lurking deep within Tyran's soul. A horrific backlash rips through the psychic connection before the guard can even pull his senses back. Sparks of raw pressure surge down his arm, instantly paralyzing his limbs in excruciating pain. The sentry collapses backward onto the hard stone pavement, gasping for breath as his comrade rushes over in pure disbelief. Terror grips the guard's chest as he realizes Tyran's aura matches that of a high-ranking noble mage. Scrambling to his feet in a panicked sweat, the sentry screams out apologies and immediately welcomes his esteemed guest inside. Tyran merely offers a polite smile, brushing off the incident as if nothing happened at all. The sentry stands frozen in cold sweat, utterly shaken by how casually this dangerous powerhouse carries himself. Moments later, he finds himself soaking peacefully in warm water, letting the long journey melt away from his tired shoulders. Beside the steaming tub, a young maid keeps her gaze politely averted, blushing from head to toe. Surrounded by rose petals and an entire team of attentive maids, Tyran wonders how a simple visit escalated into luxury service. He turns around awkwardly and asks if it is all right for him to finish washing up on his own. The maids exchange flustered glances, worried that their assistants might have somehow displeased such an important noble guest. Outside the bathhouse, the sprawling mansion estate glows under the afternoon sun, complete with manicured gardens and glass greenhouses. When Tyran finishes dressing, the lead maid gasps aloud and quickly claps a hand over her mouth. Tying back his long silver hair into a neat ponytail, he curiously asks if anything looks strange on his face. The tailored black coat with gold embroidery and high-collared white vest fit him like royalty. The maids drop into frantic bows to apologize for staring, but Tyran gently assures them that no harm was done. His warm, considerate smile completely disarms the staff, proving he has none of the usual noble arrogance. He steps into the grand reception hall, where a sharp-eyed young woman with wavy pink hair stands waiting alongside her towering butler. She sizes him up with hands on her hips, watching his confidence stride across the ornate carpet. With an amused smirk, she wonders aloud if this polished gentleman is really the same traveler who arrived looking like a beggar. Her crisp ruffled shirt and silk cravat reflect her high status as she prepares to interrogate her unexpected visitor. Crossing her arms, she stands ready to discover what secrets this enigmatic silver-haired mage is hiding. The pink-haired noble flashes a teasing smirk, pressing him to spill who he actually is and what brought him all the way to her estate. Facing her head-on, Tyran maintains his composure as she demands full honesty before deciding whether to trust him. He politely declines, explaining that personal circumstances prevent him from revealing anything about his true background. Instead of getting annoyed, she lets out an amused hum, her eyes narrowing as she decides to test him herself. Without warning, a blazing explosion of raw golden aura erupts across the grand hall, catching the terrified servants completely off guard. Shockwaves of burning pressure rip along the floor, filling the entire room with an overwhelming wave of crushing force. Her eyes glow with fierce intensity as she smiles wildly, eager to see if this mysterious visitor can survive her unleashed power. The sudden suffocating pressure hits Tyran like a brick wall, wiping the calm look right off his face as cold sweat rolls down his cheek. Tyran recoils as a sudden burst of searing crimson mana erupts right before his eyes, forcing him to brace against the heat. Channeling his own energy, his eye flares with brilliant blue light to counter the overwhelming surge. Intense waves of scorching aura flood the entire room, threatening to tear apart everything in their path. Tyran unleashes his azure magic circle against the girl's fiery array, causing two massive forces to collide in a spectacular flash of raw power. The shock wave tears through the grand hall, prompting a quick-thinking butler to shield the terrified maids from the violent blast. Swirling winds of residual mana slowly drift upward, settling across the ornate ceiling as the intense pressure finally begins to fade. Tyran lets out a deep sigh of relief, glad that the sudden clash did not bring the entire manor down. The pink-haired girl stares at her tingling palms with a wild grin, thoroughly entertained by the clash they just shared. Tyran keeps his cool as the pink-haired girl talks to him, staying calm despite the intense aura radiating off her. She steps in close with an unsettling smirk, dropping a bold and unexpected proposition that catches him completely flat-footed. Her outrageous behavior leaves our boy completely frozen in place, utterly baffled by how casually she acts. Tyran pinches his brows and tries to process what just happened, wondering if this girl is genuinely out of her mind. Cold sweat runs down his cheek as he realizes dealing with her might be more exhausting than the battle itself. She suddenly bursts into laughter and claims she was only joking, though she playfully reminds him to keep her offer in mind. Flashing one last sly grin, she makes it clear that she has taken a serious interest in his true strength. Tyran watches in silence as she strolls out of the hall with her butler, leaving the stunned servants behind. As their footsteps echo into the distance, a tense stillness settles over the bewildered estate staff. Standing alone, Tyran looks down in deep thought as he reflects on the absurd amount of magic she just exerted. His gaze sharpens in dead seriousness as he tries to process the monstrous force he just experienced. Staring at his trembling fingers, he realizes her mana capacity is easily on par with his own, which should be nearly impossible. He cannot shake his disbelief that someone so young could reach such an extraordinary tier of magical mastery. Putting the encounter aside, Tyran heads toward the office marked by the distinguished crest of the local ruler. Inside the luxurious study, the lord of the estate sits quietly behind a grand wooden desk piled with documents. Tyran steps into the center of the lavish chamber, presenting himself with formal composure before the man in charge. The noble man raises his head, ready to hear why a powerful newcomer has requested an audience. With a calm and dignified demeanor, the lord greets him, curious about the visitor standing before him. He is introduced as Rugvaltas, the Lord of Aurum, who commands authority over the entire territory. Tyran introduces himself respectfully, stating his name without hesitation as he prepares to make his request. Valtas acknowledges him and asks if his purpose here is truly to gain access to the estate private library. Before giving permission, the Lord warns him that strange rumors surround the ancient archive, cautioning him about what lies inside. He admits Tyran might not find the answers he seeks, but promises he will not stand in his way if he still insists on going. Tyran makes his way to an isolated stone tower covered in thick ivy, standing tall and eerie beneath the sky. Two armed sentries stand guard outside the arched entrance, stepping aside to let him approach the restricted threshold. With a low creak, the heavy door swings inward, revealing a pitch-black corridor waiting on the other side. Tyran steps into total darkness, ready to uncover whatever secrets are hidden within the ancient archives. A grand spiral staircase winds upward toward the light, piercing through the silent heart of the massive stone tower. Towering bookshelves line every wall, packed to the brim with forgotten knowledge collected over countless generations. Tyran stares up at the winding steps, taking in the sheer scale of the archive before him. Soft light pours down from above, illuminating endless rows of ancient tomes resting in total stillness. He walks into the central hall, where long study tables sit between towers of stacked books. Tyran turns toward the corner of the room, surprised to find someone already waiting for him. A young girl in an oversized white robe waves cheerfully, clearly excited to finally have a visitor. Her sleeves hang past her hands as she clutches a book, looking far too young for this place. Tyran can barely believe this little girl is the actual librarian before she lays down the ground rules, demanding payment for damages and strictly forbidding taking any books outside. Our boy lets out a quiet sigh, completely caught off guard by her sudden authority. The dark-haired girl points assertively toward the massive bookshelves, laying down the rules before Tyran can even get started. Tyran walks into the aisles and asks if she has actually read through all these texts herself. She follows close behind, offering him recommendations ranging all the way from ancient history to classic romance. She playfully asks if he wants something spicy instead, earning nothing but a deadpan stare in return. Stacks of heavy leather-bound tomes sit waiting across the table, ready to reveal their ancient secrets. Each volume contains records and forgotten lore, that could help him navigate this unfamiliar world. Tyran picks up a thick volume, feeling the weight of centuries preserved within its pages. Looking down at the strange runic title on the cover, he realizes this is his gateway to understanding everything. He flips open the fragile pages, uncovering detailed maps and handwritten chronicles from across the continent. His eyes scan the parchment eagerly, as every paragraph begins piecing together the reality around him. Tyran absorbs every single detail without resting, completely losing track of time in his search for answers. Reading quickly turns into his daily routine, spending hours buried under towering stacks of research. He studies the extreme landscapes of the continent, from blistering sunlit deserts to frozen magical peaks. The texts detail the true geography of this realm, alongside the distinct races thriving across its territories. Deep within mystical forests, tiny winged spirits drift past massive subterranean beasts dwelling in the shadows. Far out at sea, mysterious merfolk observe human sailors navigating through treacherous and uncharted waters. Violent ocean storms surge across the outer seas, guarding forbidden territories that few humans dare to cross. The books also record legendary artifacts, each holding distinct powers capable of turning the tide of battle. Having absorbed every essential piece of knowledge from the archive, Tyran finally closes the book, ready for what lies ahead. Sometime later, Lord Voltas sits behind his grand desk, waiting patiently for Tyran to return. Several official quest scrolls and sealed documents rest on the table, prepared for an urgent assignment. Tyran stands formally before the Lord, showing that his preparation inside the archive is officially complete. Voltas looks up and directly asks Tyran what kind of assistance or resources he will need. The Lord suddenly delivers a shocking mission, asking whether Tyran is prepared to hunt down a dangerous target. Tyran stares back in disbelief, realizing the Lord has handed him a task far more dangerous than anticipated. Lord Voltas rubs his temples as he reveals that the beast has been terrorizing the outskirts for 10 full days. Tyran smirks, realizing the Lord only granted him library access because this hunt was secretly planned all along. With their objectives set, the expedition team gathers their gear and marches out into the open courtyard. A full squad of armed guards departs through the towering fortress gates, heading deep into the wilderness. The pink-haired girl stretches her arms out towards the open sky, casually praising her father for the assignment. She walks alongside Tyran and their black-haired companion, taking point as the expedition moves along the stone road. She turns back to ask if their crew really seems that untrustworthy, quickly insisting she means no offense. Our boy keeps his steady pace, while she throws a playful glance over her shoulder to break the ice. Her easygoing attitude keeps the march lively, though everyone knows real danger waits just ahead in the woods. The black-haired warrior beams with an awkward smile, trying his absolute best to keep the mood cheerful. He trembles nervously while clenching his fist, prompting the pink-haired girl to give him a totally bewildered look. Placing a respectful hand against his chest, he formally promises Tyran that he looks forward to fighting alongside him. A loose stone skitters across the dirt path as the squad finally crosses into the shadowed woodland trail. The light-hearted banter fades instantly, replaced by sharp focus the moment they enter the monster hunting grounds. The pink-haired fighter scouts ahead along the trail, while Tyran keeps a careful watch on their surroundings. When his companion offers another overly formal compliment, Tyran immediately shuts it down with a blunt refusal. The black-haired guy winces in embarrassment, clearly caught off guard by Tyran's brutally direct personality. The squad grinds to a halt as they discover the remnants of an ambush scattered across the clearing. A kneeling soldier inspects a splintered wagon wheel, horrified that an ordinary beast could unleash such massive destruction. Tyran rests his chin in his hand, closely analyzing the wreckage to figure out what attacked the caravan. A massive charred handprint is burned straight into the shattered timber, showing terrifying physical strength. Debris and cargo litter the entire path, confirming the monster wiped out the convoy without breaking a sweat. Tyran pulls out a cloth to gather residual traces, leaving the pink-haired girl completely baffled by his methods. She glances back toward the black-haired warrior, wondering how Tyran's plans to track a creature from mere wreckage. Watching him collect the sample, she suddenly connects the dots and asks if he belongs to a tracker bloodline. Tyran calmly explains that he has used tracking techniques countless times before, so this process is second nature. Closing his eyes, Our protagonist activates his search ability to hone in on the target lingering magical essence. A surge of luminous blue energy cuts straight through the dense forest canopy, pinpointing the beast's exact escape route. Tyran points straight down the glowing path, signaling the squad to follow him into the deeper woods. The blue trail leads directly to a running river, where Tyran notes the monster intentionally washed its scent away. The pink-haired girl frowns, frustrated that the cunning beast managed to cut off their direct tracking trail. She turns to Tyran, expecting him to be stumped now that the river has masked all residual scent. Instead, our boy takes a deep breath and reads the subtle mana shifts drifting through the mountain breeze. He wheels around with a sharp warning, alerting the entire team that the predator never actually left. A colossal shadowy beast with glowing crimson eyes roars as it prepares to drop down upon them. The savage ape beast descends from the canopy, bearing razor-sharp fangs with a bloodthirsty roar. Its massive shadow engulfs the vanguard before anyone can properly raise their weapons. Heavy pressure from the incoming ambush leaves the frontliners completely frozen in their tracks. Crashing through the air, the creature channels its immense weight straight into a devastating ground slam. The bearded knight screams for everyone to brace, but the attack lands far too quickly. A brutal shock wave rips through the clearing, instantly shattering the earth beneath their feet. With a ferocious screech, the monster plows into the squad and tears their defensive line apart. Violent kinetic force hurls multiple soldiers backward, spraying blood as their armor shatters against the ground. Tyran reacts in a split second, executing a clean backstep to slip out of the lethal impact zone. He slides firmly across the dirt, maintaining perfect balance while keeping his eyes fixed on the chaos. One of the fallen warriors collapses against the brush, gasping for breath under severe bleeding. Staggering from the brutal blast, the surviving guards struggle to remain on their feet. The pink-haired girl surveys the carnage, realizing the beast took down their strongest fighters in seconds. She whips around in alarm just as another badly injured soldier collapses heavily onto the ground. Tyran stares in sudden realization, piecing together the fierce assault and recognizing that the beast is a mother. A sharp command rings out as the pink-haired girl orders an immediate pursuit before it slips away. The ape darts down the woodland trail on all fours, using the dense terrain to widen the distance. It moves with terrifying agility, kicking up clouds of dust while the remaining squad scrambles to follow. Vaulting over fallen trees, the monster rapidly gains ground to break their line of sight completely. The pink-haired girl readies her sling, spinning a stone to attempt a desperate long-range shot. But the beast weaves through the trees at blistering speed, making a clean hit nearly impossible. Charging forward alongside her ally, she pushes her body to the limit just to keep the target in view. Every sprint burns precious stamina, yet the gap between them and the fleeing predator only keeps growing. Her heart sinks as she realizes the monster is slipping out of range, making her shot useless. Suddenly, a brilliant streak of cyan mana cuts straight through the dense forest canopy above. The radiant guide beam illuminates the path ahead, locking directly onto the escaping beast. The creature glances back in utter terror just as the concentrated mana strike aligns above its skull. A thunderous crack echoes through the wilderness as the projectile strikes home with devastating velocity. The mana-infused stone punches straight through the monster, crushing its skull and ending its rampage in an explosion of blood. Both pursuers halt in absolute shock, stunned that such a massive beast was sniped instantly from afar. She lowers her sling in bewilderment, wondering who could have pulled off such an impossible lethal strike. Emerging calmly from the tree line, Tyran spins a glowing circle of mana around his fingers. He steps forward at an easy pace, effortlessly extinguishing his magical trail as if taking down the monster was light work. Our boy looks ahead with calm confidence, having casually resolved the crisis before anyone else even knew what happened. The squad sprints through the dense woods at breakneck speed, trying to outrun whatever lurks behind them. Both fighters push forward as fast as their legs can carry them, completely aware that falling behind means death. Her instincts flare just in time as she spots a heavy boulder hurtling straight toward her face. She immediately drops low, letting the massive projectile tear through the air right over her head. Realizing danger is closing in on all sides, she quickly regains her balance without losing momentum. A glowing blue path lights up the forest trail, guiding the cloaked soldiers forward through the darkness. As the duo follows the glowing guide, A ferocious red-eyed beast lunges from the shadows with open jaws. The monster bears down on them with razor-sharp fangs, ready to tear them to pieces in one bite. A projectile imbued with crushing force smashes straight into the beast, shattering its skull with an agonizing screech. Both fighters freeze in utter shock, wondering who just pulled off such an insanely precise lethal strike. Stopping in her tracks, she turns around to see the mysterious figure responsible for saving their lives. Our boy Tyran stands calmly amidst swirling gusts of wind, effortlessly spinning his glowing weapon in hand. With steady footsteps, Tyran steps forward into the clearing while the residual wind magic settles around him. Tyran gives them a confident look, proving he has complete control over the entire battlefield. Another vicious creature lets out a deafening screech as it attempts to ambush them from above. The beast lands hard in front of the pair, blocking their escape and forcing an immediate showdown. Unfazed by the snarling monster, the pink-haired girl thrusts her hand forward to unleash her specialty. Blazing embers swirl furiously up her arm as intense magic power ignites around her fingertips. A colossal fiery serpent erupts from her hand, surging straight toward the monster with scorching, lethal intensity. The roaring flame dragon bites directly into the target, reducing the ferocious beast to cinders instantly. A massive fiery explosion illuminates the woods, forcing the surrounding knights to shield their eyes from the blast. Watching the inferno, Tyran recognizes the terrifying destructive power belonging to the famous Volta's family pyromaniac. The surviving knights catch their breath, exhausted and battered after enduring such a chaotic monster raid. Proud of her devastating spell, the girl smirks while Tyran quietly walks up from behind. Her comrade happily congratulates her for the quick kill, relieved that the immediate danger has passed. She stands tall with supreme confidence, thoroughly pleased with how effortlessly she incinerated the threat. Across the camp, medics scramble to patch up bloody head wounds and treat soldiers with severed limbs. Tyran listens as one knight mutters how lucky they are that nobody actually died today. Yet Tyran vividly recalls how brutally these fighters were slaughtered and mutilated during the initial ambush. Their armor had been pierced clean through, leaving horrific wounds that should have been instantly fatal. Tyran notes that although mana strengthens a knight body well beyond ordinary human limits, this survivability feels abnormal. These rookies should be tough, but enduring fatal punctures so casually raises serious questions in his mind. Meanwhile, the pink-haired mage turns and storms off after snapping at her teammate once again. Feeling Tyran's piercing gaze on him, the flustered knight nervously asks why he's staring so intensely. Tyran just offers a calm, knowing smirk. He brushes off the tension without breaking a sweat, staying totally unbothered. The rookie knight tries striking up a conversation with the pink-haired mage, but she just shoots him an icy glare that shuts him down immediately. She crosses her arms in total annoyance, clearly having zero patience for his awkward attempts at making small talk after such a chaotic battle. Both rookies turn their attention back toward the massive monster carcass lying motionless in the clearing, wondering what Tyran intends to do with it. Tyran steps up to the charred beast alone, preparing to extract its energy before the corpse loses its magical potency completely. Reaching out his hand, Tyran channels emerald mana straight into the beast, confirming the ancient texts were right about harvesting monster cores. He concentrates as the dense energy flows inward, testing whether sharing the monster core among multiple people dampens its overall potency. The rookies gasp in awe as motes of green light swirl around them, replenishing their spent stamina and soothing their aching bodies. Tyran draws the remaining essence effortlessly into his palm, leaving the two rookie fighters staring in absolute disbelief at his refined control. A radiant vortex of pure green mana erupts around our boy, absorbing the beast's full vitality and restoring his strength to its peak. With the battle wrapped up, the entire squad begins the long march back along the stone pathway toward the towering city fortress. The rookie knight falls into step beside Tyran, enthusiastically bringing up how remarkably well the ambush was handled despite the overwhelming odds. He asks if Tyran possesses some kind of advanced sensory ability, utterly convinced that superhuman perception was the only way they survived. Tyran listens quietly to the inquiry, carefully choosing his words so he does not reveal the true extent of his capabilities. The soldiers continue their steady march through the outer valley, flanked by wooden guard towers as the sun dips below the horizon. The knight laughs cheerfully, admitting he never expected Tyran to figure out their squad's true tactical strengths so quickly on the battlefield. The pink-haired mage sighs loudly at her partner's blabbering, clearly irritated by how easily he spills squad secrets to an outsider. Brushing off the flattery with a warm smile, Tyran changes the subject and inquires about the City Grand Archive and who manages it. The mage taps her chin thoughtfully, explaining that the library is overseen by a rather peculiar figure whom most people actively avoid. Her warning only piques Tyran's curiosity further, making him realize this mysterious archivist might hold the exact answers he seeks. Before long, a magnificent ivory tower covered in creeping vines comes into view, standing tall at the center of the town square. Tyran steps through the grand entrance, his boots echoing across the polished stone floor of the silent, cavernous hall. Inside the towering archives, he finds a petite girl in white robes perched quietly on a wooden table, surrounded by stacks of ancient tomes. Tyran notes how unusual this is, since city customs strictly forbid commoners from casually addressing nobles without formal titles like lordship. Seeing her beam with childlike delight, while clutching heavy book makes him question if this eccentric girl is truly the head librarian. He approaches the massive desk, towering over the mysterious girl while waiting for her to acknowledge his presence. The dark-haired girl suddenly gasps in shock as she finally looks up. She definitely was not expecting anyone to find her here. She pulls her knees against her chest, offering a sly and knowing grin that proves she is far sharper than she appears. Endless rows of towering bookshelves stretch high into the vaulted ceiling, housing centuries of forgotten lore within the quiet chamber. Resting a hand on his hip, Tyran introduces himself and politely asks where he can find historical records regarding ancient magical anomalies. A sudden shift in the air makes him pause, sensing a subtle wave of mana rippling quietly beneath the library's wooden furniture. With a playful flick of her oversized sleeve, the girl effortlessly launches a glowing blue tome right into the air. The enchanted book glides smoothly across the hall on a trail of light, slipping perfectly into its designated slot on the shelf. Without even touching the floor, the girl rises smoothly into the air, completely defying gravity through casual, effortless telekinesis. Floating directly up to eye level, she leans forward with books orbiting around her, flashing a mischievous grin at our boy. She gets right up in Tyran's face with a wicked grin. Tyran keeps his cool, staring right back into her piercing eyes. Tyran nervously backs away with an awkward chuckle, realizing this floating entity is not an ordinary librarian. She spirals up toward the library's high ceiling and reveals her true nature. She is not even human, casually drifting among flying books. Realizing she is neither truly alive nor dead, Tyran immediately recognizes her as an ancient spirit bound to this archive. Her telekinetic mana effortlessly guides another stray grimoire straight into place across the endless shelves. Looking down over the entire grand chamber, she boldly proclaims that she is the living embodiment of the library itself. Tyran rests a hand on his chin, quietly analyzing her claim before deciding to test her physical substance firsthand. Without hesitation, he reaches out and firmly presses his palm against her midriff to check her mana density. He calmly inspects her body like an academic researcher, completely ignoring the sheer awkwardness of poking a floating ancient entity. Her playful smile tightens as a vein pops on her forehead, clearly not expecting him to be this boldly shameless. Rows of ancient knowledge tower quietly around them, while the unexpected tension lingers in the library air. Tyran just stares back at her with a completely deadpan face, genuinely treating the entire check as pure scientific curiosity. She spins dramatically through the air, sending glowing tomes orbiting around her figure in an elegant display of telekinesis. Tyran watches her closely, his sharp gray eyes tracking every single ripple of mana flowing through her ghostly form. She hovers gracefully above him, looking down with a haughty smirk to reassert her mystical authority over the hall. Yet catching the intensity of his gaze catches her off guard, flushing her cheeks as she loses her cool composure. Suddenly, she lunges forward with a crazed expression, scaring Tyran half to death as he flinches backward in horror. She widens her eyes with terrifying manic grin, thoroughly enjoying every second of shaking his calm demeanor. Tyran lets out a frantic yell as her oversized sleeves come crashing down right at his head. She delivers a swift comical chop across his chest, instantly punishing him for his earlier audacity. Leaning in with a knowing smile, She remarks that such boldness must be a true trademark of the Zahar family. Her luminous eyes gleam with deep recognition, clearly seeing familiar traces of his lineage within his gaze. Hearing his family name spoken so easily makes Tiran freeze, completely caught off guard by her insight. When Tiran asks about the second mystery, she admits even she cannot see past its powerful seal yet. She reassures him that once he grows strong enough, the hidden seal will naturally unlock its secrets for him. Thinking of his mother, Tiran lowers his gaze as a wave of quiet resolve washes over him. He offers a respectful bow of gratitude, prompting the lonely spirit to eagerly beg him to stay and study longer. Tiran wastes zero time, immediately firing off endless questions about the ancient books and demanding detailed explanations. Sitting together at the long wooden table, the two spend hours digging deep through forgotten magical theory. As she explains centuries of lost research, Tiran channels his mana and manifests a floating sphere of water. Tiran watches with rapt fascination as the magical orb reacts to his precise control, revealing unprecedented inner stability. The glowing liquid membrane shimmers intensely under his concentration, holding intricate mana currents beneath its surface. Inside the magical sphere, complex microscopic structures begin to swirl, proving his theoretical approach to mana manipulation actually works. She breaks down the fundamental principle of friction producing heat, bridging the gap between raw mana and physical science. Tiran sits attentively at the study table, setting a single red apple in front of him for his next experiment. Extending his index finger, he taps the apple stem to test his newly acquired magical theory. The instant his finger touches the stem, the apple shrivels up into a charred, withered husk. His mana control instantly drained every drop of moisture. The dried fruit crumbles across the table as the extreme reaction finishes taking effect. It proves just how volatile friction manipulation can be without proper dampening. Tiran stares down at the ruined fruit while the librarian evaluates his technique. She begins explaining where the mana leakage occurred during his test. She points out that the real issue is not his raw mana output, but the fact that fundamental magical principles have been hidden away for centuries. Tiran listens closely, realizing that true magical mechanics were kept secret by elite bloodlines to maintain their monopoly on power. She leans across the table, explaining how powerful noble families actively hoard this foundational knowledge, so common mages never reach higher tiers of casting. With the core principles thoroughly broken down, their intensive study session finally draws to a close beneath the towering archives. Sunlight washes over the massive ivy-covered spire, marking the completion of his training inside the ancient tower. Tiran scratches the back of his neck as the librarian uses her telekinesis to float stacks of glowing grimoires toward the upper shelves. She casually mentions that the tower owner left behind automated enchantments to keep the massive archive running smoothly. Her concentration suddenly slips, causing her own levitation spell to yank her straight toward the ceiling. Tiran watches in amusement as she screams, rocketing up into the air after completely losing control of the floating magic. Our boy just smiles and turns away, entirely unbothered by her sudden flight across the library. Gravity quickly takes over, sending her crashing flat onto the stone floor right behind his boots. She pouts on the floor with puffed cheeks, sulking after embarrassing herself right in front of her student. Tiran stands tall while she floats back onto her feet with a trail of blue mana, ready to finish cleaning. She gathers the remaining glowing tomes from the air, carefully returning each ancient book to its rightful spot. Tiran pushes open the heavy arched doorway, stepping toward the exit while the enchanted books hover behind him. She slots the final volume back into the high shelf, bringing their long lesson to a close. Armed with vital new knowledge, Tiran wears a confident smile as he prepares for the next leg of his adventure. The grand spire stands tall against the clear sky, rising above the lush green canopy of the forest. With his heavy travel pack strapped on, Tiran strides through the courtyard, checking the continental map he received from the library. He sets his sights on the city of Zahar, heading out down the road toward his next destination. A calm, determined smile crosses his face as he resolves to find answers about his missing parents. The massive spire pierces the clear blue sky, marking Tiran's arrival at the grand royal capital. A brand new chapter in his journey begins today. Tiran marches briskly down the paved stone pathway, checking his route against the continental territory map, he managed to secure from the Grand Library. His long journey points directly toward the vast Elril Desert east of Orem, the dangerous domain belonging to the influential House Zahar. Wearing a calm smile, he steadies his breath and prepares himself mentally for whatever hardships might lie ahead on the open road. Finding clues about what happened to his missing parents remains his ultimate goal, driving him forward into the unknown wilderness. Even so, he knows rushing blindly into danger will only get him killed before he even finds any real answers. Once night blankets the dense woodland, he sets up camp beside a gentle riverbank, tending his fire while gathering strength for tomorrow. As dawn breaks through the canopy, he reflects on the baffling mystery that has remained completely silent throughout these past 18 years. Continuing along the trail, he comes across mangled skeletal remains scattered across the grass, rotting away under dark and suspicious circumstances. A sudden commotion pierces through the quiet forest, immediately halting his steps and prompting him to turn toward the source of the noise. Nearby, a panicked horse lets out a shrill whinny, thrashing its head violently as genuine terror grips the frightened beast. Tiran slips quietly behind the thick greenery, keeping low to assess the dangerous confrontation unfolding in the clearing just ahead. A powerful war horse rears back aggressively, fiercely defending a collapsed traveler who lies unconscious on the dirt path behind it. The loyal steed stomps its hooves into the ground, refusing to abandon the fallen rider despite facing overwhelming hostility. Spotting the crafted saddle strapped across its back, Tiran realizes this beast is no feral monster, but rather a devoted mount protecting its owner. Instead of attacking, the loyal steed is actively shielding the traveler from two purple-skinned figures closing in for the kill. Scanning the surrounding brush, he identifies the exact angle of the ambush strike that initially brought the helpless rider crashing down. His sharp gray eyes narrow with intense focus as he observes the attackers, analyzing their posture and anticipating their next moves. The two purple-skinned assailants bicker impatiently with glowing yellow eyes, clearly aggravated by the persistent horse refusing to step aside. Bandages wrap tightly around their lean, muscular limbs, pulsing with ominous dark energy that signals they are far from ordinary bandits. Taking in their sinister aura and strange appearance, Tiran immediately recognizes them as dangerous dark elves operating deep within human territory. One of the dark elves raises bandaged hands, unleashing an ominous wave of violet magical energy that seeps directly into the dirt. Black foul sludge bubbles up from below as ancient dark elf necromancy begins twisting the rotten remains into a grotesque construct. A terrifying undead beast pulls itself together from the shadows, mirroring the forbidden rituals Tiran once studied inside ancient historical tomes. Twisting dark mana solidifies into a massive skeletal skull with curled ram horns, radiating intense predatory bloodlust. The necrotic horror unleashes silent roar, ready to tear both the loyal horse and its unconscious master into bloody shreds. Looking closer at the gruesome scene, Tiran spots something so deeply revolting that it makes his stomach turn completely. The muscular dark elf casually sinks sharp fangs into a severed human arm, tearing away chunks of raw flesh without hesitation. His partner scolds him while holding another limb, treating human body parts like nothing more than an everyday travel snack. She warns him to stick to his own portion, confirming beyond any doubt that these two monsters are savage, unrepentant cannibals. Knowing the defenseless traveler on the ground is next on their grotesque menu, Tiran decides he cannot let these atrocities go unpunished. He shifts his weight with soundless precision, preparing to ambush the unsuspecting pair before they can butcher their prey. Activating his concealment magic, our boy vanishes entirely from view, blending into the ambient wind like an unseen wraith. Still distracted by their sickening feast, the two dark elves continue chewing, completely unaware that retribution is already standing beside them. Tiran bursts out of concealment with blinding speed, driving a vicious slash through the air to cut down the vile monsters instantly. His blade rips through the air in a single fluid motion, putting immense weight behind the sudden ambush to execute clean blow. Purple blood sprays across the clearing as the female dark elf is caught completely off guard, her glowing eyes widening in pure disbelief. Before she can even process what struck her, her severed torso collapses into the dirt, eliminating one cannibalistic threat in a single clean sweep. Black shadows begin rising rapidly from the earth below, responding instantly to the sudden chaos of the lethal surprise attack. Dark necrotic liquid bubbles up from the tainted ground, signaling that the dark elf necromancer is ready to retaliate with full fury. The male dark elf glares with burning yellow eyes, consumed by pure rage after witnessing his companion get slaughtered in seconds. He screams for his beasts to gather close, rallying a massive horned bull and demonic hound around him for defense. Suddenly, an enchanted stone streaks through the tree line at terrifying speed, packed with lethal momentum aimed right at the monsters. The heavy projectile violently smashes into the ram beast skull, shattering its guard and throwing their formation into total disarray. Fierce shockwaves rip across the upper canopy, violently snapping thick tree branches and filling the air with scattered debris. Invisible strikes rapidly batter the horned monster, keeping the beasts occupied while the elf scrambles for answers. Gritting his sharp fangs in utter frustration, the dark elf realizes his enemy is utilizing high-tier concealment magic to remain completely undetected. Desperate to find his target, he commands his tracking hound to sniff the forest floor for any trace of enemy mana. The beast digs its claws into the shadowy ground, quickly locking onto faint magical vibrations rippling through the dirt below. A sharp arc of golden wind suddenly tears through the foliage, heading straight for the cluster of summoned monsters. The compressed gale slices cleanly through overhead branches, forcing the enemy to brace against the incoming shock wave. Both the elf and his hound hold their ground as the wind passes, realizing the attack was merely a tactical distraction. Hidden safely within the brush, Tyran flashes a confident smirk as his clever diversion works out exactly as planned. A sudden shift in the air behind him alerts the dark elf that his opponent has already repositioned. Emerging from the shadows, Tyran winds up his strike with fierce focus, ready to exploit the blind spot he created. Planting his boot firmly onto a fallen log, he pushes off with explosive momentum to launch his next offensive spell. The summoned beasts whip around in sheer panic, only to find Tyran already standing right in front of them with primed magic. A giant horned bull lets out a savage roar, thrusting its massive skull forward to shield its summoner from the incoming strike. Tyran thrusts his open palm forward without flinching, channeling an overwhelming concentration of fiery mana into his hand. Blazing spirals of flame erupt from his fingers, illuminating the entire woods in blinding crimson light. Our boy unleashes massive torrent of roaring fire, completely engulfing the charging bull in incinerating heat. The burning beast screeches in sheer agony as the scorching blaze chars its thick demonic hide down to the bone. As the charred monster collapses into a cloud of ash, Tyran gracefully vaults backward through the air to create space. Landing in a low crouch, Tyran realizes that taking out the female dark elf first kept them from overwhelming him with double summons. Before he can even catch his breath, a sharp rustle in the grass warns him that another predator is lunging from his blind spot. His gray eye instantly locks onto the movement, tracking the incoming ambush with razor-sharp focus and tactical precision. The vicious hound bursts from the undergrowth, snapping bloody fangs directly at his leg. Tyran reacts in a split second, driving an upward kick straight into the beast's snout to knock it out of midair. His crushing kick connects with bone-shattering force, sending the demonic beast spinning violently into the dirt. Tyran maintains his sharp focus, keeping his guard raised for whatever the enemy attempts next. A towering horned beast suddenly lunges forward with glowing crimson eyes, giving Tyran zero time or space to dodge the incoming charge. The monstrous creature strikes downward with terrifying force, tearing through the atmosphere before Tyran can even raise a proper defensive barrier. Devastating impact sends our boy flying backward through the woods, violently crashing through the dense forest canopy. Pure kinetic momentum sends him hurtling uncontrollably through the air, completely shattering his balance before he can recover. Blood spews from his mouth as the concussive blow violently crushes his ribs. His battered body plummets helplessly toward the forest floor after absorbing the brutal impact. Tyran crashes onto his knees, coughing blood, as the elf and his beasts close in. The dark elf erupts into mocking laughter, pointing smugly at our battered protagonist and assuming victory is guaranteed. Out of nowhere, Tyran's loyal steed charges into the clearing, driving its heavy hooves straight into the villain's skull. The crushing impact slams the arrogant elf face first into the dirt, wiping the sinister smirk clean off his face. The thunderous strike slams the arrogant dark elf face first into the dirt, before he can even register what hit him. Suddenly, the summoned beasts whip around in bewilderment, distracted from finishing off their wounded target. Without slowing down, the heroic steed violently bucks into the beasts, scattering the summoner front line. The dark elf scrambles across the dirt in sheer disbelief, realizing his perfect ambush has completely collapsed. Tyran seizes the opening instantly, drawing a blinding arc of azure sword aura across the clearing. The luminous blade energy cleaves upward through the forest, parting the dense canopy with razor precision. His strike flashes past the panicked dark elf, closing the distance before the rogue can even react. The razor-sharp edge bites deep into the villain's neck, severing flesh and ending any chance of retaliation on the spot. A violent fountain of dark purple blood sprays through the air as the strike decapitates him instantly. Lethal spray spatters down across the woodland floor, marking the sudden, bloody end of the dark elf. The sheer power of the clean slash echoes through the clearing, confirming the kill beyond doubt. Tyran stands motionlessly amidst the swirling dust, letting the residual aura settle around his drawn blade. The headless corpse of the dark elf collapses backward into the undergrowth, totally lifeless and defeated. Blood coats the slain sorcerer's severed neck, as the magical link binding his creatures snaps completely. The dark magic begins unraveling, dissolving into thick purple shadows that pool across the soil. With their master dead, the remaining summoned beasts vanish, leaving only fading black mist behind. The faithful horse trots proudly through the dissipating smoke, letting out a gentle neigh toward its ally. Residual dark miasma completely burns away under the hooves, restoring quiet to the blood-stained path. A faint, tired smile breaks across Tyran's bloodied face, as relief finally washes over his battered body. His strength finally gives out entirely, sending him crashing down onto his hands and knees in exhaustion. Gasping for breath, Tyran mutters to himself that he genuinely thought he was about to meet his end. The loyal horse gently lowers its soft muzzle right beside his face, checking on its exhausted savior. Tyran looks up in quiet gratitude, deeply moved by the incredible steed that just saved his life. The surrounding forest settles back into peaceful stillness, leaving only quiet, rustling leaves across the clearing. Tyran tenderly presses his forehead against the horse's warm cheek, gently stroking its snout with a soft smile. The blond youth slowly blinks his heavy eyes open, as consciousness trickles back into his battered mind. The full moon hangs high above the quiet forest, casting a gentle silver glow over the mist-covered treetops. He suddenly scrambles backward in sheer panic, gasping for breath as terrifying memories of the ambush flood back. Right across the crackling campfire sits Tyran, calmly chewing on dried rations without showing even a hint of tension. Our boy merely chews his food in silence, studying his newly awakened guest with steady, unimpressed eyes. The young traveler stares across the flames in complete bewilderment, trying to understand how he survived the nightmare. A soft nudge suddenly brushes against the traveler's shoulder, breaking him right out of his spiraling daze. The loyal mare lets out a low, familiar whinny, pressing forward to comfort her bewildered master. Calling out Tilly's name in disbelief, he wraps his arms around her leg as immense relief washes over him. Tyran gives a slight smile, remarking that the clever horse knew exactly how to find help to save him. Clutching his chest, the traveler sits back down and expresses his deep gratitude for being rescued from death. Tyran leans forward slightly and asks the young man what brought him into such a dangerous forest. The young traveler begins recounting his journey, explaining the mission that led his entire party straight into disaster. A painful memory strikes him hard, causing a silent tear to trace down his cheek as grief overwhelms him. The faithful horse lets out a soft sniff, watching quietly as the young man's grief pours out. Tilly stands quietly beside the campsite, her tail flicking gently as she watches over the grieving survivor. Her sturdy hooves remain planted firmly against the dark soil, offering a quiet sense of calm. The young traveler clutches his trembling face, completely overwhelmed by the agonizing guilt of losing his entire unit. Tyran watches the heartbroken man in silence, patiently waiting for him to gather whatever composure he has left. Our boy suddenly sharpens his gaze, staying alert for any hidden danger that might still be lurking. Assuming they took out the main ambush, Tyran decides to activate a wide search spell just to be safe. Closing his eyes, he channels his mana outward, casting a focused sensory web across the surrounding forest. A silent wave of detection magic sweeps through the tree line, scanning the darkness for any hostile presence. The pulse races along the forest floor, feeling out every thicket to make sure no ambushes remain hidden. His detection zone stretches hundreds of yards outward, confirming the surrounding wilderness is completely quiet and clear. Opening his eyes, Tyran confirms that no other dark elves remain in the immediate area. Across the campfire, the young traveler sits hunched over in silence, still reeling from the devastating ambush. He looks up at Tyran with wide eyes, completely baffled by how a single guy pulled this off. Tyran downplays the achievement, casually explaining that ambushing one of the necromancers caught them completely off guard. The young traveler stares in sheer disbelief, his golden aura flaring as he grapples with Tyran's unbelievable modesty. When their magical energy is compared side by side, Tyran's intense blue aura visibly dwarfs the traveler's golden light. Tyran privately realizes the traveler is surprisingly weak, knowing his own mana was only boosted by draining the dark elves. The traveler still cannot fathom how someone could survive fighting two deadly necromancers without an entire high-ranking squad backing them up. He openly asks why a mage with such insane strength would ever be wandering this dangerous territory all by himself. Tyran just sits quietly across the campfire, utterly unfazed by the glowing praise and disbelief thrown his way. Breaking the quiet night, the young man gathers his courage to invite Tyran to his noble family at House Burke. Beaming with a grateful smile and pressing a fist to his chest, he genuinely hopes to repay his savior with proper noble hospitality. Sunlight pierces through the thick canopy above, clearing away the morning fog as the long road through the wilderness stretches forward. Deep in the woods, Tyran and the blonde traveler halt along the dirt path alongside their horse to inspect their surroundings. Thick greenery lines the narrow passage, creating a quiet border between the trail and the wild forest beyond. The blonde youth steps ahead alongside Tyran, reflecting on everything they went through to make it this far together. They stop right beside an ancient stone marker half buried in the grass, confirming they reached their next destination boundary. The blonde traveler thanks Tyran, admitting with a genuine smile that he appreciated not being mocked for his shortcomings. Rubbing the back of his neck in slight embarrassment, he confesses that most people never took him seriously before. Standing shoulder to shoulder on the trail, the mutual respect between them settles naturally without another word needed. Looking up with complete sincerity, the blonde companion decides it is high time they drop the polite formalities between them. Beside the engraved milestone, Tyran looks down at the path they walked, quietly taking in the gesture. Our boy offers a warm, gentle smile, fully welcoming the shift in how they treat each other. The blonde companion suggests they speak casually from now on, as true travel companions rather than formal strangers. Beaming with excitement, he thrusts out his open hand to officially seal their newfound partnership on the road. Tyran pauses for a brief second, deeply appreciating the simple yet meaningful offer of genuine friendship. He grasps his hand firmly in return, locking in a bond built on trust and shared survival. Right after, attention turns to the heavy wooden storage chest resting on the grass beside them. Curious about what is inside, Tyran leans down and asks about the heavy trunk resting before them. He pops the latch open, revealing a fresh feast of baked bread, cured meat, and chilled wine. Tyran stares in total bewilderment, shocked that his traveling buddy is casually hauling around a five-star feast. Thanks to special preservation enchantments, the food stays steaming hot and fresh as if straight out of an oven. Next comes an enchanted kettle designed to heat beverages instantly with pure magic, without ever needing firewood. He then presents an array of magical tools, explaining that this peculiar device can instantly construct a safe shelter. The blonde companion puffs up his chest with a huge grin, utterly thrilled by their absurd camping setup. Tyran notes to himself that magical gear is usually rare and expensive, making this entire collection seriously impressive. The blonde youth cannot hold back his wide grin, eager to show off even more of his handy traveling gear. Our boy watches with an observant eye, curious how someone casually obtained such high-grade enchanted equipment. Holding up 2 fingers, Tyran casually mentions that he happens to carry a pair of magical items too. When questioned about where an ordinary traveler got such rare items, our boy remains completely calm. With a deadpan stare, Tyran lamely claims that running into rare magical items just happens naturally. The blonde youth playfully raises both hands, laughing off the ridiculous excuse with pure amusement. Tyran pulls out a couple of unique mystical tools from his own pouch to compare their rare craftsmanship. The blonde companion gasps in utter shock the second he catches sight of what Tyran is casually holding. Caught off guard by the extreme reaction, Tyran flinches as his companion stares at the item in total disbelief. Crossing his arms, the blonde traveler leans back with a smirk, pressing Tyran for details about where he got such rare goods. He taps his chin in deep thought, realizing his quiet traveling buddy is far more mysterious and connected than he initially let on. Tyran casually steers the conversation toward the great bloodlines of the realm, curious about the hidden factions ruling from the shadows. Their steady footsteps echo along the dirt path as they continue their long trek across the countryside. As they walk beside the horse, the blonde youth explains how noble lineages wield massive power across these lands. These secretive clans operate in absolute obscurity, enforcing their ancient authority through pure bloodline superiority. Moving quietly beneath the trees, Tyran absorbs every detail while keeping his own origins entirely to himself. Tyran asks about their destination, wondering what kind of reception awaits them once they reach their stop. His companion grins warmly and promises that his people will welcome helpful traveler with open arms. Tyran keeps his focus sharp, knowing that stepping into high, noble territory always carries hidden risks. The blonde youth points ahead with excitement, signaling that their journey is finally nearing its end. Our boy gives a calm nod, ready to face whatever noble politics come with this unexpected detour. Golden fields begin rustling beneath the warm sun as the landscape opens up before them. Vast plains stretch out under a brilliant blue sky, welcoming them into a much wealthier province. They finally arrive at the central territory of Arabian, a prosperous domain known for its fertile lands. A magnificent white palace rises above the horizon, complete with sprawling courtyard gardens and towering spires. The iron gates swing wide open, granting them immediate entry into the pristine manor grounds. An elderly matron rushes down the grand corridor with open arms, overwhelmed with joy at their arrival. The blonde youth throws himself into her embrace, holding her tight after being away for so long. Tyran stands awkwardly to the side, watching his companion bawl his eyes out over the heartfelt reunion. The bearded head butler steps forward, dryly pointing out that proper etiquette should still be observed inside the estate. Wiping his tears, the young man introduces Tyran as the reliable friend who safely escorted him back home. The matron places a comforting hand on his shoulder, though her expression shifts into deep maternal concern. She gasps in alarm the moment she hears about the dangers he encountered along the road. The butler narrows his eyes, immediately growing suspicious of how a random stranger managed such a rescue. Turning directly to Tyran, the butler demands a clear explanation regarding his background and true motives. His cold, piercing gaze searches for any sign of deception from this unknown, silver-haired traveler. Tyran places a hand over his chest and delivers a flawless, polite greeting to put them at ease. The blonde youth panics, trying to intervene before the staff makes things difficult for his savior. The matron's gaze softens as she realizes Tyran's manners are far too refined for a simple wanderer. The young master pleads with them to trust his companion, insisting that Tyran did nothing but protect him. Tyran politely asks them to understand the situation, remaining entirely calm despite the heavy scrutiny. A chilling, low voice suddenly speaks from the shadows of the doorway, breaking the tense standoff. Everyone in the hall instantly freezes, snapping their heads toward the entrance in total surprise. A slender figure clad in dark robes stands silhouetted against the bright doorway, resting her hand on the frame. A young woman with straight black hair and piercing blue eyes steps forward with an icy presence. The blonde youth stands frozen in place, utterly stunned to see her appear before them. Word of the Princess of Arabian hanging in the air makes Tyran realize this family is far more dangerous than he anticipated. Standing before them with a chilling, deadpan gaze, she radiates an overwhelming authority that commands complete silence across the room. Tyran breaks into a cold sweat, carefully keeping his posture polite so he does not invite unwanted hostility. The blonde noble can only watch nervously from the hallway, completely powerless to cut through her imposing presence. Without showing a single trace of emotion, she turns on her heel to leave the tents gathering behind. Bidding everyone a curt good night, she retreats down the corridor while the entire household staff remains glued in place. Silence settles over the grand entrance hall as everyone slowly begins to exhale after her departure. The head matron offers a respectful bow toward the empty hallway, ensuring all royal decorum is strictly upheld. Night falls peacefully over the sprawling estate, giving our boy a much-needed break to rest his mind. Morning light breaks and Tyran snaps awake, ready to navigate whatever madness this noble mansion throws at him next. Sprawled across a massive luxury bed, he takes a moment to appreciate the royal treatment before getting dressed. Elegant wall sconces line the silent hallways as the manor slowly comes alive in the golden morning glow. Tyran steps out into the immaculate corridor, taking in the grand architecture of the prestigious estate. A cheerful call echoes down the hall, making Tyran glance over just as he begins exploring the vast corridor. The blonde youth marches over with a bright wave, thrilled to see his savior up and resting well. Catching up on the morning routine, our protagonist points out a few curious details about the mansion layout. Tyran listens patiently as the young noble excitedly rambles about life within these heavily guarded walls. A blinding flash of golden energy violently illuminates the windows, stopping Tyran dead in his tracks. Deafening cracks of thunderous magic rattle the glass, vibrating through the entire corridor with overwhelming raw power. Tyran stares up in genuine disbelief, wondering what kind of monster could unleash this much power so early. Seeing his shock, the blonde noble chuckles and steps beside him to explain the spectacular morning display. Golden bolts of lightning crash down repeatedly from the sky, transforming the courtyard into an awe-inspiring storm of mana. Both of them stand transfixed by the window, bathed in the radiant golden glow of raw elemental force. The young master proudly explains that this devastating display is the unique heritage of the Storm bloodline. Massive arcs of lightning strike down into the open grounds, demonstrating pure royal power on a terrifying scale. A spark of genuine admiration gleams in the young man's eyes as he watches his formidable kin train. Turning back toward Tyran, he suddenly gets an ambitious thought that brings an eager smile to his face. He openly admits that he is dying to know who would actually win in a fight between Tyran and Isa. Tyran offers an awkward, nervous smile, wanting absolutely no part in picking a fight with an overpowered princess. But the blonde youth only flashes a mischievous grin, clearly scheming ways to make that dream matchup happen. Soon after, out on the sunlit terrace, the mysterious Princess Isa walks gracefully along the pristine marble courtyard. Sensing their approach, she turns her sharp, icy gaze toward them with an expression that gives nothing away. The blonde youth immediately steps up and proudly introduces Tyran as his honored guest and savior. Isa looks he up and down, silently assessing whether the rumors of his skill hold any real weight. While the young master scratches his head with an easygoing grin, Tyran braces himself for whatever royal trial awaits him. Tyran covers his mouth, trying not to laugh, which immediately makes the blonde youth snap at him in annoyance. The young master pouts and asks if Tyran is making fun of his misery as well, sweating bullets under the princess' heavy gaze. He tries playing it cool with a nervous laugh, attempting to break the ice before things get truly uncomfortable between them. Princess Isa does not move an inch, letting the heavy silence linger across the sunlit courtyard. She raises her chin with an icy expression, making it crystal clear that flattery will not earn her respect. Tyran remains totally unfazed by her hostility, keeping his calm demeanor as he waits to see what she does next. Golden sparks suddenly ignite across Isa's bright blue eyes, radiating an overwhelming wave of pure combat energy. He instantly snaps his head toward the heavens as an intense pressure crushes down on the terrace. Dark storm clouds swallow the sky in seconds, while violent arcs of thunder begin tearing through the atmosphere. Raw lightning violently branches across the sky, building up an insane amount of destructive power right above their heads. Princess Isa becomes completely cloaked in crackling golden voltage, acting as the very catalyst calling down the storm. A deafening thunderclap detonates across the sky as jagged bolts crash violently toward the ground. From within the blinding electrical discharge, her piercing blue eyes lock straight onto Tyran with ruthless precision. The thunderous blast explodes downward, testing whether Tyran can withstand the weight of her genuine killing intent. Bracing his posture, Tyran withstands the shock wave roaring right above his head. Tyran grits his teeth against the searing gale, struggling to hold his ground under her suffocating spiritual pressure. His fingers twitch near his robes, bracing his core just in case he needs to retaliate on instinct. Focusing every sense, Tyran refuses to blink through the blinding sensory overload. Then in a split second, the violent storm completely evaporates, leaving behind a tranquil blue sky. The entire terrace falls dead silent as the overwhelming aura vanishes, just as abruptly as it appeared. A bead of cold sweat drips from Tyran's chin, while he catches his breath from that suffocating mental test. He exhales deeply, fully aware that she was not just showing off. She was measuring his exact limits. Isa glares right back at him without a shred of remorse, satisfied that he did not crumble like ordinary men. Instead of backing down in terror, Tyran's eyes sharpen with pure resolve as he returns her intense stare. He squares his chest and settles his stance, silently proving that royal intimidation will never make him flinch. Tyran stands face to face with the quiet, dark-haired girl in the courtyard, where her cold glare makes it obvious she is not looking to make friends. Our boy keeps his guard completely raised, beads of sweat forming on his brow as he braces for whatever test she has in store. He prepares to speak, but before things can escalate into a fight, an unexpected interruption cuts right through the standoff. A blonde student suddenly steps between them with a carefree grin, waving his hands to diffuse the tension before anyone draws a weapon. The newcomer throws an arm over Tyran's shoulder and talks down to the girl, treating her serious warning like one big joke. She listens quietly, maintaining an icy stare while letting him dig his own grave with every single careless word. Tyran lets out a faint sigh, hoping this playful banter might actually smooth over the hostile mood without any blood spilled. The blonde guy leans forward with a smug smirk, totally convinced that his charm has won her over. Her deadpan gaze shows zero amusement, signaling that his cocky attitude just sealed his fate. The ground beneath his boots suddenly twitches, snapping the pavement before he even realizes what is happening. Both men glance down in confusion, sensing a concentrated pulse of mana surging right through the stone walkway. A glowing golden sprout punches through the cracked tile, rapidly expanding in size within a split second. Massive vines erupt from the pavement like striking serpents, shooting upward right toward the unsuspecting student. Before he can dodge, the thick tendrils coil tight around his limbs and pin his arms against his torso. The vines yank him straight into the air, leaving him dangling upside down while the girl watches from below without flinching. Looking at her trapped target, the dark-haired girl coldly speaks up, refusing to show an ounce of mercy for his foolish meddling. As the trapped student screams in terror, she coolly tells him to stay hanging up there because watching him panic is genuinely fun. Tyran looks up at the commotion, analyzing the exact principles behind how her plant magic operates. Dropping to one knee, he focuses his senses entirely on the surrounding courtyard to trace the flow of mana. Placing his palm flat against the stone floor, he channels his perception deep beneath the tiles. He reasons that just like fire creates heat and water draws moisture from the air, plant magic cannot summon flora out of thin air. True enough, dormant seeds buried under the stone are what feeds the spell when flooded with magical energy. It is not creation from nothing, but accelerated growth forced by an overwhelming surge of mana. Cracking the technique wide open, Tyran channels his own bright blue mana directly into the earth to take command. Brilliant blue light explodes through his fingertips, shattering the paving stones as his magic overtakes the root system. The dark-haired girl eyes widen in genuine shock, caught completely off guard by his sudden intervention. Hanging upside down above, the blonde guy gapes in utter disbelief at the surge of power erupting below. Glowing blue vines whip across the courtyard, instantly clashing with her spell to shatter its grip on their companion. Tyran slams his hand onto the stone ground, unleashing glowing blue roots that surge forward to counter her golden vines. The yellow vines unravel in an instant, sending the screaming blonde crashing face first onto the stone floor. Touching his chin thoughtfully, Tyran reminds himself that using his true Zahar bloodline magic openly here would be practically suicidal. His gaze sharpens as he plans to test another subtle application of nature magic without exposing his secret heritage. Extending an open hand toward a nearby flower bed, he sends a delicate pulse of mana rippling into the greenery. The thick foliage rustles violently in response, reacting instantly to the invisible current flowing through the soil. A startled brown rat darts out of the bushes and scurries across the pavement, proving his spell successfully stimulated the brush. Tyran's hand reaches down toward the stone pavement to intercept the small creature. The dark-haired young noblewoman watches with keen curiosity, wondering what kind of demonstration he plans next. Tyran calmly drops down to one knee and scoops the tiny rodent straight into his bare hand. A faint glow lights up his eye as he directs a subtle thread of specialized mana forward. The creature thrashes and squeals as the invisible current ripples through its flesh, initiating rapid internal decay. Within mere seconds, all moisture and vitality vanish, reducing the lively animal to a dried, shriveled husk. Her blue eyes widen in sheer astonishment, shocked that anyone could command such precise biological degeneration so casually. Rising to his feet, Tyran dangles the mummified corpse by its tail to issue an unspoken challenge. Taking the bait, her proud expression hardens into fierce determination to prove she can easily do the same. With a flick of her pale fingers, she uses her own magical pull to draw in another creature. Another unsuspecting rat scampers obediently across the polished stone floor, straight toward her waiting grasp. It leaps right into her palm, caught fast in her tightening grip, radiating intense golden mana. She begins channeling raw energy directly into the struggling beast to force rapid aging. The spell proves far more resistant than expected, forcing her to squeeze tighter as the animal writhes furiously. Sweat forms on her brow as she realizes this is no ordinary nature spell, but a deeply complex technique. Tyran calmly explains that it was merely an offhand idea, leaving his blonde peer listening with eager fascination. The blonde youth chuckles encouragingly, confident that a gifted high-ranking mage like her can master it in seconds. Stung by their casual chatter, she flares her aura even brighter and doubles down on her magical output. A blazing golden haze engulfs her entire frame as she relentlessly pumps raw mana into the tiny target. Pain racks the small animal as unrefined, brute force magical energy crashes violently through its body. A wild, strained grin spreads across her face as her competitive ego completely overrides her common sense. Her brilliant aura lights up the entire courtyard, but the massive drain pushes her stamina toward its absolute limit. She channels a massive wave of raw golden mana straight into the rat, desperately brute-forcing her spell with sheer volume. Desperately demanding the rat to rot, she unleashes one final, explosive spike of magical pressure. Her glowing pupil shakes as the sudden, massive mana depletion delivers a brutal shock wave to her senses. The sheer volume of energy forcibly breaks down the creature's flesh, causing its face to rapidly disintegrate. With a sharp hiss, the lingering mana disperses, leaving absolute silence hanging in the air. Only a withered husk remains in her grasp, proving her desperate brute force method actually worked. The desiccated corpse sags downward, its withered legs dangling lifelessly. The blonde youth stares wide-eyed in horror, realizing she pushed herself dangerously past her breaking point. Gasping raggedly for breath, her trembling hands barely manage to keep holding the dead rodent aloft. Total exhaustion claims her consciousness, causing her heavy eyelids to slide shut as the world goes black. Her weakened legs give out completely, sending her falling directly toward the hard stone pavers. Collapsing onto the pavement, she lies motionless on the ground alongside the lifeless rodent she stubbornly destroyed. The blonde companion panics and cradles her head, while our boy watches on, unbothered by her reckless pride. Tyran looks down at Mesa slumped on the floor, noting that her sudden blackout makes no sense for ordinary mana exhaustion. Running completely dry on mana is one thing, but completely passing out means something far more dangerous is tearing through her body. She has lost all physical strength to even keep herself upright, leaving her utterly helpless in her companion arms. Rather than standing by and letting her condition worsen, Tyran decides to step in before things take a fatal turn. Focusing closely on her state, he realizes her body is pushed well past its natural limits. Reaching down without a second thought, our boy prepares to move her to safety. Tyran scoops Mesa up into his arms, completely ignoring Az's panicked shouting as he carries her straight toward the manor. Weak breaths escape her lips while unconscious, her feverish face showing the heavy toll this reckless stunt took on her health. High above the grand estate, the quiet courtyard settles as she is brought indoors to rest. Opening her eyes slowly, Mesa wakes up inside a luxurious bedroom while a frantic voice asks if she can hear anything. The caretaker speaks with frantic worry, expressing immense relief upon seeing the young lady finally open her eyes. Still disoriented, Mesa wonders how she got here, only to learn Az's reported she collapsed during magic training with their guest. Dark bags line her eyes as the bitter reality sinks in, reminding her of her physical fragility. The caretaker explains that they must monitor her condition closely, especially since her body refuses to function normally. She places a warm bowl of soup by the bedside, pleading with Mesa to eat something despite her magical restrictions. With a heavy sigh of concern, the older woman can only hope the stubborn girl actually listens this time. Leaving the quiet room behind, the caretaker steps out, leaving Mesa all alone under the massive bed canopy. Staring sideways at the warm meal, an intense wave of revulsion begins creeping up her throat. Sitting silently on the edge of the mattress, she forces herself to consider taking at least one bite. Trembling fingers reach forward and lift the dish, bracing for what she knows is coming. Raising the spoon to her lips, she desperately tries to overcome her deep physical resistance to food. The moment the warm liquid touches her tongue, her entire nervous system violently rejects it. Her pupil shrinks in raw horror, as terrifying memories instantly trigger inside her mind. Horrific phantom figures with weeping black eyes and screaming mouths flash before her vision, clawing toward her in agony. Wretched hands tear through the darkness of her memory, suffocating her with unbearable guilt and terror. A blinding shock wave rips through her thoughts, completely overwhelming her fragile grip on reality. Shattering across the wooden floor, the porcelain bowl explodes into pieces as hot broth splashes everywhere. Broken shards scatter in every direction, proving her mind cannot even tolerate a single sip of nourishment. Clenching the white bedsheets in a desperate grip, her knuckles turn white from the agonizing panic attack. Leaning forward in absolute misery, violent dry heaves rack her chest as her body rejects everything. Clutching her head in pure torment, she curls inward, completely consumed by the nightmares haunting her existence. Meanwhile, divine light shines down across the cracked stone visage of a sacred saint inside the grand sanctuary. Towering angel statues bathe in radiant sunlight throughout the massive cathedral, creating an atmosphere of majestic reverence. Holy illumination cascades over the golden altar platform, marking the sacred heart of the temple. Tyran walks alongside the dark-clad swordsman across the grand marble emblem, heading deeper into the holy sanctuary together. Haram Burke reaches down to the hilt at his waist, drawing his steel with practiced calm. Standing tall inside the sanctuary, the scarred swordsman clears his scabbard, making his intentions unmistakably clear. Introducing himself as Haram Burke, he plants his feet firmly on the marble floor to prepare his demonstration. Tyran stares blankly at the sudden formal greeting, completely caught off guard since combat was nowhere on his mind. Haram meets his gaze with total sincerity, treating this encounter with absolute gravity. Speaking with stern earnestness, the veteran explains his craft, showing deep pride in the skills he spent decades honing. Tyran sweats nervously as he listens, completely dumbfounded by the man going on and on bragging about his own skills. The blade slices through the air in a sharp flash, kicking off a series of fluid practice swings. Haram shifts smoothly into two-handed guard, flowing through precise martial forms without wasting a single speck of motion. His boots pivot against the polished tiles, redirecting his balance perfectly with each fluid step. Watching the man swing wildly across the temple floor, Tyran flatly asks what on earth he is even doing. Ignoring the question entirely, Haram cuts downward with flawless momentum, letting his body naturally channel the blade weight. He thrusts forward with sudden speed, whipping up gusts of wind as the steel hums with pure kinetic force. Tyran observes every subtle muscle shift, realizing how masterfully the veteran connects each strike into the next. Finishing the demonstration, Haram lowers his sword and turns back to face his silent audience. Raising an open palm, our protagonist tries to politely decline whatever bizarre sparring session is brewing. Haram steps right up into his face, pressing forward with fierce intensity to test his nerve. Backing up against the sudden lack of personal space, Tyran leans away from the overbearing swordsman. Locking eyes from inches away, Haram examines the young man closely to see if he flinches under pressure. Apparently satisfied with what he found, Haram nods quietly and rests the broad blade over his shoulder. He adjusts his grip on the hilt, ready to pass along the weapon for a practical evaluation. Stepping forward across the cathedral crest, the swordsman holds out the naked steel directly toward Tyran. Staring at the weapon, Tyran is immediately reminded of the slaughtered beasts and brutal fights from his journey. Memories of desperate battles rush through his mind, contrasting sharply with the structured martial forms he just witnessed. Haram extends the hilt fully, inviting him to demonstrate his own capability with a blade. Beneath the watchful gaze of the angelic statues, the two men stand poised for an unexpected test of skill. Neither man moves an inch, their boots rooted to the glowing temple floor as the offer hangs between them. Giving in with a subtle sigh, Tyran prepares to accept the sword despite his initial reluctance. The bearded instructor smiles warmly, offering encouraging words as he waits for Tyran to finally take the weapon. Tyran wraps his fingers around the leather handle, feeling the familiar balance of cold, forged steel. Holding the blade upright, he genuinely wonders how much he can even accomplish with standard swordsmanship. Haram leans in with focused scrutiny, refusing to miss a single fraction of the boy opening move. Dropping into a low stance, radiant blue energy suddenly surges across Tyran's legs and wraps around the drawn blade. The instructor gives Tyran a stern reminder before their sparring drill begins, making sure he stays fully focused on the fundamentals. Tyran grips the steel hilt firmly, drawing the blade free to demonstrate his basic form. Tyran admits he cannot do much without proper refinement yet, keeping his expectations humble before the master. The instructor watches with sharp eyes, scrutinizing every single flaw in the boy's stance before letting him proceed. Tyran unleashes a sudden surge of glowing blue aura, dropping low as raw energy flares across his shoulders. Mana swirls around his boots as he shifts his weight forward, anchoring his body into a balanced battle stance. The instructor immediately bellows at him at the top of his lungs, pointing out a critical mistake. Our boy quickly corrects his posture and stammers out an apology, keeping his blade raised under the strict critique. Shifting his boots across the tiled floor, he resets his footing to match the exact spacing demanded of him. The instructor closes the distance with heavy steps, inspecting the adjusted stance from every angle. Tyran nods politely, accepting the scolding with quiet respect instead of complaining about the harsh training. Taking another practice swing, Tyran repeats the motion while the instructor observes closely with arms crossed. A rare look of satisfaction flashes across the instructor's face, pleased that the lesson actually registered. Sunlight pours through the high-arched windows of the grand cathedral hall, marking the end of their exhausting session. Tyran raises his sword overhead for one final repetition, finishing his grueling routine in front of the silent instructor. Catching his breath, Tyran catches the lesson that understanding the true difference between forms is what truly builds mastery. The heavy cathedral doors swing open, revealing a cloistered priestess waiting at the threshold to deliver a message. Lowering his blade, Tyran turns toward the doorway to see why someone from the temple has arrived. The priestess bows politely, indicating that an important guest wishes to speak with him right away. Keeping her hands folded beneath her mantle, she delivers the summons with calm, measured reverence. Tyran hands his training blade back to the instructor, before following the priestess past the towering goddess statue. The priestess leads him through the grand halls, guiding the way to the private quarters above. Tyran listens attentively as they arrive outside the chamber, wondering who requested this sudden meeting. He straightens his robes before stepping through the door, ready to face whatever awaits inside. Standing beside an open window with the breeze tossing her dark hair, a stern noblewoman greets him with a solemn look. She immediately apologizes, admitting she heard he was confined within the temple because of her pointless commotion. Tyran steps into the room, surprised to see her offering such a humble apology so directly. Her sharp blue eyes fix on him, carrying heavy dark circles from days of endless stress. She pauses, waiting to see whether he holds any hidden resentment for the trouble she brought upon him. Tyran gently raises both hands, reassuring her that the whole ordeal really was not a big deal at all. With an easygoing smile, our protagonist brushes off her guilt, telling her she has nothing to feel sorry about. Annoyed by how casually he dismisses everything, she raises her voice, demanding he take the situation more seriously. Tyran only smiles back warmly, remaining completely unfazed by her fierce temper and refusing to get defensive. The massive chandeliers hang silently over the opulent parlor, as the two stand in quiet stalemate by the window. Suddenly, a dark-gloved hand lifts a dead, mangled rodent by its tail, showing evidence of foul play lurking within the estate. Tyran waits quietly as the dark-haired girl pauses, clearly struggling to figure out how to handle his easygoing attitude after everything that happened. She clears her throat and tugs at her high collar, unable to hide her embarrassment now that her fierce anger has completely fizzled out. Turning away to avoid eye contact, she walks over to a nearby cabinet and begins rummaging through the drawers to find something specific. She pulls out a wooden comb, gripping it tightly as if preparing to prove a point that will finally justify her stubborn pride. Brushing the comb vigorously against her clothes, the noblewoman explains that friction between two objects creates a mysterious force capable of attracting matter. Lifting the charged comb above her head, she watches in smug triumph as her long, dark strands rise into the air from static electricity. Tyran is left completely dumbfounded by her bizarre comb trick. He stares at her in utter disbelief, wondering what on earth she is doing. Catching his blank stare, she instantly realizes how ridiculous she looks posing with a comb, and her smug confidence evaporates into pure mortification. An awkward silence settles between them by the window, with her standing stiff as a board while wishing the floor would swallow her whole. She quickly drops the subject and mutters that she will find a proper way to repay his kindness later, ending the awkward exchange. Tyran offers a warm, reassuring smile, genuinely glad to see her prickly walls finally start to come down around him. Soon after, a mouth-watering feast is served, featuring thick, juicy steaks, roasted poultry, savory egg stews, and grilled vegetable skewers. The estate hosts a grand dinner beneath the glowing chandelier, gathering the lord, his lady, and their guests around the magnificent table. Beneath the heavy carved oak of the banquet table, subtle tensions linger as everyone prepares for serious business amidst the lavish hospitality. Tyran's blonde companion leans over his plate in awe, completely dazzled by the sheer mountain of gourmet delicacies laid out before them. Watching his friend drool, Tyran breaks into a nervous sweat, realizing this extravagant meal was definitely prepared as a special bribe for their services. The elegant matriarch sits composed at the head of the table, smiling cordially as she observes her guests enjoying the extravagant spread. Tyran maintains his best polite manners, offering a gracious nod so he does not give away just how suspicious he feels inside. As the dinner winds down, the formal pleasantries fade away, and the conversation finally turns toward the real reason they were invited here. The young noble heir raises a hand with a confident smirk, cutting straight through the small talk to bring up their upcoming assignment. Setting his silverware down, the young lord prepares to lay out the critical details of what they need done, and under what terms. He asks how much time they will need to pull off the mission, making sure both parties are on the exact same page. Tyran and his partner exchange a contemplative glance, carefully weighing the difficulty of the request against the timeline being offered to them. Our protagonist keeps a cool, measured expression, locking in the plan in his mind before giving their official answer to the nobles. The next morning arrives over the misty city, with the towering stone spires casting long shadows across the waking town streets below. Walking through the crowded market, the blonde companion brings up how Tyran's magical prowess matches Mesa, yet he still trains tirelessly every day. Tyran listens quietly to the unexpected praise, looking at his companion with calm curiosity as they navigate through the busy merchant stalls. His buddy beams with genuine respect, expressing how truly inspiring it is to see someone so talented remain so humble and dedicated. Tyran sheepishly waves his hand to brush off the compliment, insisting that his friend is blowing his abilities way out of proportion. Still, a soft smile touches Tyran's lips, clearly touched by how much faith his partner puts into his magical skills and growth. His friend suddenly throws an arm over his shoulders with a mischievous grin, pointing toward a lively building just down the street. Tyran flashes a knowing, sly grin right back. He cannot help but smile at his friend's ridiculous excitement. Without hesitation, his friend literally drags Tyran's limp body across the cobblestone square, while the local townsfolk watch in total confusion. Inside the vibrant hall, a polished roulette wheel spins rapidly as the silver ball rattles across the numbered slots in high-stakes excitement. Tyran shakes his head in absolute disappointment as his blonde friend drags him right into the lively gambling hall. The casino tables are bustling with chips everywhere. Looking at the spinning roulette wheel, Tyran realizes this place is nothing but trouble and decides not to blow their hard-earned cash on cheap luck. Tyran immediately waves his hands in refusal, but his blonde companion laughs heartily, trying to convince him to take at least one wild shot at fortune. They step back outside into the crowded market square, where merchant wagons rumble past, and his energetic friend enthusiastically points toward their next destination. Tyran turns to follow, but a sudden flash of familiar artwork catches his attention on a nearby wooden notice board. Tacked among criminal bounties is an old poster showing the distinct silhouette of a grizzled warrior, stirring up sudden memories from his past. A knowing smile forms on Tyran's face as he remembers the legendary figure who shaped so much of his early path. He fondly recalls the rugged swordsman who always chewed on a toothpick with an easygoing grin, never boasting about his unmatched prowess. His mind drifts back to a theater performance where wooden practice blades clashed violently under the stage lights in dramatic reenactment. Actors leaped across the stage beneath glowing chandeliers, performing famous battles before an enchanted audience hanging onto every theatrical strike. The grand narration echoed through the hall, recounting how Arabian's greatest heroes boldly marched deep into the treacherous Devil's Desert to conquer evil. On stage, the lead swordsman dramatically struck down the desert demon, executing the climactic blow to roaring cheers from the crowd. With a sweeping martial flourish, the performance wrapped up, cementing another legendary tale into popular folklore. His blonde friend jumped up clapping with wild excitement, while Tyran politely joined in, amused by how dramatic the whole story became. His companion raved about the epic battle, but Tyran could only smirk at how exaggerated these theatrical legends tended to be. Tyran remembered that legendary warrior Kaorn humbly calling himself an ordinary knight, wondering if he would ever meet him again to ask what really happened. As twilight bathed the castle town in warm amber, Tyran tucked those fond memories away and looked forward to the days ahead. Morning sunlight streams through the bedroom window, filling the quiet room with the cheerful chirping of early birds. Tyran opens his eyes, instantly feeling a strange, heavy presence looming right beside his bed that snaps him wide awake. A massive, bearded, muscular trainer is squatting directly over him, staring down with intense, unblinking eyes that would startle anyone awake. Our boy freezes under his blanket, wondering what kind of nightmare he just woke up to in this lavish guest room. Tyran sits up groggily and rubs his eye, completely confused about why this hulking man is staking out his bedside at sunrise. The giant trainer rises to his full, intimidating height, grinning as he prepares to drag Tyran into a grueling routine. Tyran decides that tough training is way better than wasting time goofing off. He steels his resolve and prepares to take on whatever brutal workout awaits him. Right on cue, his blonde friend swings the door wide open with a cheery smile, ready to drag Tyran out for breakfast. Instead of just Tyran, the blonde companion is greeted by the towering, brick-wall physique of the personal trainer staring right back at him. His friend instantly stops dead in his tracks, his cheerful smile vanishing into pure dread as he takes a terrified step backward. Stammering in panic, the blonde boy hastily insists he only just got back from traveling and clearly walked into the wrong room. Without waiting for a response, his terrified friend turns on his heel and bolts down the hallway as fast as his legs can carry him. Tyran stares at the open doorway in utter disbelief, genuinely baffled by why his fearless friend just ran away like he saw a ghost. The terrifying truth hits Tyran in an instant, breaking him into a cold sweat as he realizes the brutal torture that awaits him. Minutes later, Tyran is grunting on the gym floor, struggling through push-ups with heavy iron barbell plates stacked squarely on his back. His trembling fingers claw into the floor mat, while beads of sweat pool under him from the crushing weight overhead. The trainer crosses his muscular arms and watches closely, expecting nothing less than pure dedication from his exhausted pupil. Tyran finally collapses onto his back, gasping wildly for air with his chest heaving after pushing past his absolute physical limit. Completely spent, our boy lies motionless on the floor with trembling arms, learning the hard way what real conditioning truly costs. The instructor stands tall with crossed arms, looking down at his exhausted student. Tyran catches his breath on the floor, barely managing to acknowledge the harsh lesson. A rare look of satisfaction crosses the veteran trainer's face. He sees genuine grit in Tyran, proving the young man has what it takes to survive real combat. Tyran pushes himself upright, while the coach reminds him that strength is never permanent. Constant trials are the only way to forge a body that will not break. Wiping the sweat from his brow, our boy listens closely to every single word. He knows skipping any part of this routine could cost him his life. Before Tyran can even catch his breath, The instructor's demeanor shifts completely. Another brutal round is already being prepared without a second of rest. A sadistic grin spreads across the big man's face. Whatever mercy he had just shown vanishes into thin air, signaling pure misery for his student. Tyran flinches in pure horror at that terrifying expression. His instincts scream that the real nightmare has only just begun. The instructor leans in with an unhinged smile, thoroughly enjoying every ounce of panic showing on the young trainee's face. Heavy pressure floods the chamber as the trainer flexes his muscles, daring Tyran to step back into the fire without complaining. The silent gym fills with heavy tension. Massive iron weights and training equipment sit ready under the golden sunlight, waiting for the next round of torment. Tyran gasps wildly for air, feeling the crushing gravity of the enchanted room. Every single movement feels 10 times heavier than normal, completely draining his stamina. Steel clashes fiercely as Tyran raises his blade, barely deflecting a heavy strike from his instructor. Sparks erupt between them from the sheer force of the impact. He scrambles across the floor to dodge another devastating swing, desperately trying to keep his footing under the oppressive gravitational weight. After sword practice, Tyran shifts straight into magic training with his dark-haired partner. Blue sparks dance across his fingers, while she summons crackling golden lightning. Tyran steps forward into the training courtyard, steadying his stance to refine his control over the volatile elemental mana. Shadows stretch long across the stone floor as the sun dips below the horizon, marking hours of non-stop training. Above the courtyard, the evening sky blazes orange as a sharp snap echoes through the academy grounds. A sudden bolt of lightning tears through the air with a deafening crack, streaking directly toward the target dummy. The bolt blasts against the wooden post, scorching the surface but veering slightly off the bull's. Precision magic proves far harder to master than raw power. Tyran sighs in frustration, while looking down at the fading sparks on his fingertips. Missing his mark means his control still needs serious refining. His dark-haired companion quietly watches him from across the courtyard. She studies his progress, seeing how determined he is to master the technique. He offers a modest smile, brushing off the misfire and showing he is ready to try again until he gets it right. The two converse quietly in the open plaza as evening settles in, taking a brief breather between their intense magical drills. Her quiet expression softens slightly as she prepares to speak her mind, but before she can finish, footsteps rapidly approach. A cloaked courier rushes across the paved courtyard, interrupting their session with an urgent matter that cannot wait. The messenger skids to a sudden halt right in front of Tyran, visibly shaken and struggling to catch his breath. Both of them immediately turn their full attention toward the newcomer, sensing that something serious just went wrong outside the grounds. With genuine panic in his voice, the runner delivers the alarming news that hostile forces have just breached the perimeter. Tyran's expression instantly hardens. The peace of their training session is shattered, replaced by the grim reality of an imminent battle. A sudden wave of shock hits everyone present as the sheer gravity of the threat becomes clear. Lurking within the shadows, a horde of menacing silhouettes emerges with glowing yellow eyes, ready to slaughter anything in their path. Grotesque demonic creatures with white mane and vicious claws creep forward from the darkness, hunting for blood. Tyran stares ahead with calm resolve, ready to test his grueling training against the real monsters that have finally arrived. Tyran stands alongside his dark-haired companion, keeping his guard up after everything that just transpired. He makes sure his gear is firmly secured, ready for any unexpected trouble that might suddenly arise. The memory of vicious demonic beasts still lingers heavily, reminding him how close danger always lurks. Those grotesque monsters from the dark depths would gladly rip apart anyone caught off guard. Tyran clears his mind, determined not to let past horrors distract him from his main goal. The attendant gives a respectful bow before departing, leaving the two of them alone in the quiet courtyard. She lets out a soft breath, visibly unwinding now that the tension of the meeting has passed. Tyran turns to her, wondering what their next move in the academy should be. She claps her hands together gratefully, thanking him for assisting her throughout everything they went through. Tyran modestly waves off her praise, assuring her that he only did what anyone in his position would. Their conversation shifts toward the valuable opportunities waiting for them right here on the grounds. He listens closely as she prepares to share a crucial piece of advice. She smiles warmly, letting him know that she has something that will genuinely benefit his training. She tells Tyran that taking advantage of this will give him a massive boost in his growth. Tapping her temple with a sly grin, she reminds him that true power begins with knowledge. She tells him to expand his mind and study the most valuable texts available. Tyran instantly catches on, realizing she is pointing him directly toward the library's secret archive of books. A glowing blue butterfly gently flutters between them through the evening air. She suggests checking it out right away, but the delicate butterfly drifts closer with an eerie presence. Tiny currents of electric energy suddenly begin to spark and weave around his consciousness. Those electrical currents shoot straight through the nervous system, rapidly spreading across the entire body. The electric surge pulses through the core, racing down the internal channels without warning. It travels all the way down to his feet, electrifying every muscle and nerve in seconds. Raw electrical force crackles outward, completely seizing his body from head to toe. The surge tightens around his mind like an invisible grip, suffocating his thoughts. A sharp crack of energy snaps through his brain with overwhelming intensity. His eye flashes as the blinding blue bolt rips directly through his field of vision. From the outside, the academy courtyard appears completely peaceful, masking the sudden shift in reality. The atmosphere turns completely bizarre as the woman stands perfectly still in front of him. The blue butterfly perches against the side of her hair, yet her expression remains completely hollow. A glowing blue butterfly rests gently over the dark-haired girl's eye as she speaks in an eerie, distant trance. Tyran starts to respond with a cheerful smile, totally unaware of what is unfolding before him. An agonizing shock wave rips through his skull, instantly shattering his calm demeanor. A brutal flash of red cuts through his vision, signaling a vicious mental backlash. Tyran stumbles forward and clutches his head in sheer agony, while she stands watching without moving an inch. The mysterious woman flashes a faint smirk as if testing his limits. Without giving him a moment to recover, she addresses him with absolute composure. She casually folds her hands behind her back, completely unfazed by the mental shock wave she just unleashed upon him. Tyran clutches his throbbing head and forces a strained smile, trying to shake off the intense pressure ringing through his skull. With a sudden gust of wind, her feet lift straight off the pavement without chanting a single incantation. She shoots straight into the sky like a rocket, leaving our boy squinting through the rushing gale in complete disbelief. Her parting words echo down, telling him that if he manages to master even greater magic in the future, their paths will cross again. From high above the academy courtyard, Tyran looks like nothing more than a tiny speck left far below in her dust. She casts one final icy glance downward, completely detached as she vanishes high above the academy grounds. Tyran stares blankly into the open sky, letting the breeze settle while his mind races to process what just happened. Tyran stands tall and tightens his fists, ready to set out on the next leg of his journey. A hawk screeches high above the sunlit clouds, marking a shift across the region toward a bustling city street. A massive crowd of citizens gathers along the stone roadway, lining up in quiet anticipation for an approaching procession. Whispers ripple through the onlookers as everyone cranes their necks to catch a glimpse of the arriving figures. The townsfolk burst into loud cheers, raising their hands in excitement as the legendary warriors finally march into view. A young blonde spectator stares up in absolute awe at the towering armored riders leading the front. The boy beams with genuine excitement, completely thrilled to see such high-ranking figures up close. The energy spreads across the entire district as rows of timber houses frame the crowded stone avenue. An armored knight with long dark hair leads a steady warhorse through the center of the cheering spectators. She guides her steed with steady hands, maintaining total military discipline despite the noisy welcome surrounding them. The majestic gray warhorse trots down the paved boulevard, drawing the gaze of every single bystander along the road. When the blonde boy tries to shout out again, his father immediately grabs his arm and tells him to stay quiet. A sudden heavy stillness rolls across the street, immediately cutting through the cheering crowd. Tyran stands among the bystanders, noticing the instant shift in mood as everyone turns their focus behind the cavalry. Guards line the side of the street, standing in rigid formation, their faces turning completely grim and serious. Heavy, deliberate footsteps echo against the stone path, signaling the arrival of someone on a completely different level. Tyran locks his eyes on the approaching figure, realizing this imposing man is Battle, the current head of the Arabian family. A hulking man with unkempt brown hair slowly marches forward, casting a chilling aura over the entire street. Dressed in dark, rugged garments beneath a flowing blue cloak, his sheer physical presence demands total obedience. Every step he takes carries immense weight, proving why ordinary citizens dare not make a sound in his presence. This is Battle Arabian himself, bearing sharp, glowing blue eyes and a battle-scarred face hardened by decades of conflict. His armored collar glints in the sunlight, reflecting the ruthless reputation he has forged across the entire realm. Tiran and the blonde youth watch quietly from the sidelines, taking in the suffocating aura radiating from the clan leader. Talk among the crowd recalls his legendary history, including his deep ties and past conflicts involving the Zahar family head. Battle walks steadily down the center of the avenue, framed by armored horsemen who escort him through the silent town. The bystanders can only watch in stunned silence as the terrifying head of Arabian strides past, without sparing them a single glance. A bystander stares upward in utter terror, unable to look away from the overwhelming authority towering directly over the street. Battle raises his gloved hand toward the sky, declaring his unwavering protection over the land and sending shockwaves through the gathering crowd. The clan lord raises his arm high, commanding absolute silence as his immense presence dwarfs everyone standing beneath him. He strides forward with unyielding momentum, his heavy armored greaves leaving no doubt about who rules this territory. Lightning flickers within Battle glowing blue eyes, revealing a terrifying surge of raw elemental power that could tear the city apart. Golden lightning erupts across the darkening heavens, tearing through the clouds to herald the unmatched strength of the Arabian clan. Bolts of golden thunder crash down from above, blinding the onlookers and forcing the entire town into pure, terrified reverence. The blinding burst of energy casts long shadows across the square, wiping out any lingering doubt about the Lord's dominance. The crowd roars in feverish adoration, shouting their allegiance to Arabian as the sky blazes with pure golden light. Citizens bow and pray in fervent devotion, completely enraptured by the terrifying display of their leader godlike might. Standing amidst the chaos, the blonde youth stares at the raging storm overhead, feeling the massive gulf in sheer power. Even in failing health, the Lord still commands power capable of splitting the very earth itself without breaking a sweat. A colossal lightning strike splits the sky above the fortress, illuminating the entire valley in a breathtaking flash of raw fury. The golden afterglow settles across the rooftops, leaving the fortified city bathed in an eerie, quiet luminescence. The blonde youth clenches his jaw with burning resolve, silently swearing that he will one day reach those same heights. Sometime later, Tiran receives a specialized identification bracelet from the clerk, finalizing their business inside the quiet hall. The clerk politely hands over the gear, explaining the official terms before sending them on their way. Our boy inspects the crafted blue band, satisfied that their preparations for the upcoming journey are finally falling into place. Tiran turns toward the hooded matron, holding out the bracelet to confirm that everything is properly in order. The gentle woman smiles warmly, giving her blessing and offering parting advice for the treacherous road ahead. Tiran listens carefully to her words, acknowledging the heavy risks they are taking by venturing into uncharted territory. She reminds him to stay vigilant at all costs, knowing full well that dangers lurk behind every friendly face. With her guidance delivered, the conversation comes to an end, cementing their agreement without another word spoken. Tiran bows respectfully inside the sunlit room, officially concluding their business before heading toward the exit. Stepping out into the grand hallway, Tiran begins making his way toward the main courtyard to regroup with his companion. Our boy glances sideways with a guarded expression, staying sharp in case anyone tries to trail him through the corridor. Waiting outside, the blonde youth and a burly bearded guard intercept Tiran's to hand over his final piece of gear. The bearded warrior tosses Tiran his sheathed hunting blade, returning the weapon now that their inspection is complete. Tiran grips the leather-wrapped scabbard, feeling the balanced weight of the steel he relies on in deadly fights. Holding the blade close, Tiran smiles in relief, genuinely grateful to have his trusted weapon back in his hands. The bearded guard flinches in mild shock, caught off guard by how effortlessly the silver-haired youth carries himself. Without lingering any further, the guard turns on his heel and marches back down the cobblestone road. Fabric snaps sharply in the wind as preparations for their imminent departure kick into gear. The blond youth drapes a heavy dark cloak over Tiran's shoulders, ensuring they can travel through the territory unnoticed. Side by side, the two set off down the stone path, ready to face whatever awaits them beyond the gates. Footsteps echo across the cobblestone street as their shared journey finally comes to an end, leaving each of them to walk their own path. Tiran glances back over his shoulder, giving his companion one last warm look before they part ways for good. A reassuring hand rests against the dark fabric of the traveling cloak, sealing their quiet farewell with mutual respect. The blond youth flashes a bright, open grin, clearly wishing his friend the absolute best on the long road ahead. With his own travel bag secured at his hip, he stands prepared to head toward his own destination. Tiran returns the warm smile, genuinely appreciating the brief camaraderie they shared while navigating the city together. A hearty laugh breaks out from the blond youth, completely easing any lingering tension about their upcoming separation. Standing in the sunlit alleyway, the two finish up their parting words before taking their respective routes out of the district. As a parting tip, the blond youth warns him to steer clear of ships whenever possible, shaking his head with a weary sigh. Tiran agrees without hesitation, taking in one last glimpse of the massive academy estate towering over the surrounding rooftops. Soon Tiran is walking down a wide dirt road through golden fields, casually sharing the path with local peasants and wandering travelers. Hauling his massive pack over his shoulders, our boy looks completely relaxed as the open countryside stretches out before him. Deciding it is time to pick up the pace, Tiran plants his boot firmly into the dirt to tap into his real speed. In a flash of raw power, he blasts forward like a missile, kicking up a violent shock wave that knocks nearby travelers off balance. The young traveler stares in sheer disbelief as the silver blur disappears ahead faster than his eyes can even follow. The elderly peasant freezes in absolute awe, unable to process how a lone human just vanished down the road at supersonic speed. A massive dust trail shoots into the sky as our boy blazes across the horizon, leaving the bewildered onlookers miles behind in seconds. Wind shrieks against the earth as sheer kinetic force tears across the terrain, without slowing down for a single moment. Day turns to night and back to dawn as Tiran sprints past village churches, towering fortress walls, and sprawling plains without ever resting. His heavy boot skids hard across the dry soil, bringing his high-speed sprint to an abrupt and dusty halt. Dust settles around him as Tiran catches his breath, his silver hair windswept as he scans his new surroundings. He steps calmly down a shaded forest trail, heading straight toward the destination he covered across the entire region. A sudden foul stench hits his senses, causing him to twitch his nose in immediate suspicion. Sensing something terribly wrong in the air, he turns his head toward the edge of the woods to investigate. Pushing deeper into the misty trees, the eerie quiet of the forest only confirms that trouble lies just ahead. Tiran narrows his sharp gray eyes as the trees clear, locking onto a grim sight waiting in the clearing. A completely decimated village opens up before him, filled with splintered timber, collapsed roofs, and absolute destruction from an overwhelming assault. Peeking through the undergrowth, the horrifying reality of what happened here begins to reveal itself among the dead leaves. Maggots crawl through the hollow eye socket of a rotting corpse, proving this settlement was slaughtered days ago and left to decay. Bound to scorched wooden stakes, blackened corpses stand as grotesque warnings in front of a shattered stone watchtower. Tiran steps into the village square surrounded by executed victims tied to posts, taking in the full scale of the brutal massacre. His expression hardens into cold resolve, knowing whoever caused this senseless slaughter did it with pure, unchecked cruelty. The broken hull of a wooden boat lies smashed against the crumbling stone ruins, hinting at how the attackers arrived. Charred wooden wreckage and burnt support beams litter the desolate street, showing everything in their path was systematically burned down. Inside an abandoned sanctuary, overturned wooden pews marked with crosses and tattered animal pelts lie scattered across the dust. Tiran notices faint seam lines cut straight through the damaged floorboards, hinting that something lies hidden right beneath the sanctuary. He kneels down among the scattered debris, brushing away the soot and dust to inspect the concealed floor hatch. Gripping the sturdy wooden handle, Tiran braces himself before uncovering whatever was locked away below. With a strong heave, our boy pulls the heavy trapdoor open, revealing a stone staircase descending into darkness. Stale, cold air drifts up from the hidden cellar as the underground shelter is exposed to the light. Tiran's eyes widen in surprise as he catches faint movement hiding down at the foot of the stairs. The stone steps lead directly down into a cramped cellar, shielded from the carnage above. Huddled against the cold floor sits a young girl in a white dress, trembling in sheer terror. The sudden intrusion shatters the silence, sending a wave of sheer panic through the tiny hiding spot. The frightened little girl screams in absolute terror, clutching her chest as her hiding place is suddenly uncovered. Tiran immediately raises his empty hands, telling her to calm down because he means her no harm. Stepping down into the cellar, he softly reassures the frightened child that he only came to help. Tears well up in the young girl's eyes as she looks up, desperately trying to hold back her sobs. Tiran crouches down to meet her at eye level, giving her the space she needs to feel safe. He speaks in a calm, soothing voice, promising that her nightmare is over and she is protected. Overwhelmed by relief after days of hiding, the little girl loses all strength and collapses forward onto the stones. Tiran gently scoops the unconscious child into his arms, keeping her safe and warm against his chest. Carrying the young survivor carefully, he climbs back up the stairs and steps out into the ruined daylight. A sudden chill sweeps across the clearing as lethal frost mana gathers into a razor-sharp point. A crystalline arrow made of pure ice crackles with deadly energy, fully primed to strike. Tiran looks ahead calmly, instantly registering the hostile greeting waiting for him outside the sanctuary. A fierce blonde archer draws an icy bow aimed right at Tiran's head, backed by armed warriors demanding answers. Tension grips the courtyard as neither side makes a sudden move among the smoldering ruins. The blonde archer fiercely warns him to freeze, demanding to know what he is doing with the child. Her fingers hold the freezing bowstring tight, ready to release a deadly arrow at the first sign of aggression. She plants her feet firmly on the scorched ground, cutting off any possibility of an easy escape. Tiran meets her gaze without showing even a flicker of fear, keeping his composure entirely under control. Holding the sleeping girl securely, he prepares to defuse the situation before another senseless clash begins.